I'm your host, Madeline.
I am your co-host, David.
And today we are here with part 4.
And you seem to want to be adding a part 5 Patreon.
Well, I feel a little bad for the Patreon stuff because it was the live stream, but just the audio version. So I feel like they kind of got, screwed.
How was the live stream?
I think live stream was great.
I got called Unk.
Oh, well, yes. I get called Unk every day.
What? I don't know what Unk is.
We're old, David.
Yes, I know that.
We're Unk.
I was before we started recording, I was saying that, like, my ideal of, like, a good politically active person is a professor I knew who was very old and just wore Birkenstocks and lectured people about Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, well, it's not bad. It's not bad. Yeah. I mean, I think it's okay to be Unk, but you don't want to be Unk and chopped.
Well, I am that.
You are not Unk and chopped, David.
I feel chopped.
Yes, Unk, no chopped.
I feel especially chopped today. I think may relate the story about how I didn't get sleep last night.
Yes.
So it's 3 a.m, and I just hear a very drunk girl outside of my apartment window saying, "Had you said anything at all to me, I would have responded," over and over for like 10 minutes. While she fumbled for her keys and presumably her date sat there silently. And I'm going to say, that is not good consent.
No, that's not going to end well for anybody. Nobody's going to be happy with that situation in the morning.
Yeah.
So you were kept awake by bad consent occurring.
And as a consequence of which I'm very chopped.
You're not chopped.
I feel very chopped.
I don't think you're chopped. Me, Unk, and thriving.
Yes.
Unk and thriving. We were also just talking about how a group of teenage leftcoms added me to their group chat on TikTok, and it was the most deranged, psychotic shit I've ever experienced in my life. And I was telling David, they're all obsessed with Critique of the Gotha program, but they've never read LaSalle. So they don't really know what Marx was critiquing. So because they understand it vaguely has something to do with statehood, they assume Marx is critiquing like a state existing at all after a worker revolution, which explains a lot of their viewpoints. But it leads to them just calling anything LaSalle or Kautsky, which is very, very funny. And this manifested ultimately a couple of times, actually, not just one time, but a few times, with clips circling around the internet of me reading Theory on live stream. Mm-hmm. And it's Lenin, but you can't see that it's Lenin. You would have to know it's Lenin. And people, these young teenage leftcoms accusing me of peddling Menshevism because they don't know what LaSalle is. They just read Critique of the Gotha program, so they think anything involving a state is LaSalle, and they think it's all Menshevism to the extent that when you read Lenin, they think Lenin's a Menshevik now. It's astounding. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful display of confusion, and I'm like, the teenagers are teenaging.
I do. It is the bizarre 2026 equivalent of only liking the one B-side of a popular band. This is where they are.
But you downloaded the song off of like LimeWire and it was misattributed to a different band. So you are like vehemently into a song that you tell everyone is by a band that is not.
For the longest time, I got the bands Jawbox and Deftones mixed up because I was trying to download Jawbox on, I want to say, Kazaa.
Well, you're welcome for getting Deftones. What a happy accident someone brought into your life, David. No, but I get it. There was actually this one song I downloaded, and I was like, why is this a good REM song? REM sucks. Why is this the best REM song on the planet?
I like the jangly shit from like 1981.
Yeah, everybody likes the jangly shit from 1981. I get it. But they were, for anybody who doesn't know, REM, the first indie band. Actually attributed as the first indie band.
I mean, did Michael Stipe tell you to say that?
No, this is something music critics are like, this probably was the first indie band. It's just pretty widely accepted. Interesting lore about REM. I always thought it was interesting. So, whatever the case, I download the song. I'm like, this is the best REM song I've ever heard. I go like 4 years of my life being like, and REM had one randomly very, very good song until one day I'm in San Francisco. I'm in my friend's car. And my friend is like, do you like T-Rex? And I was like, I haven't heard much T-Rex. Puts it on. No, not even T-Rex. Television. It was television.
Oh, yeah,
I was like instantly like, oh my God, this is not REM. And it was a television song.
Oh, this is okay. So first of all, speaking of T-Rex, this is my welcome to the banter part of the episode. But there's a really fabulous Lester Bangs interview with Ed Sullivan where he's talking about why T-Rex never blew up in the United States, and he's like, Mark Bolan, he thinks he's David Bowie, but he's actually David Cassidy.
Yes, I can see this. I've also watched a lot of very cringe interviews with Mark Bolan, R.I.P. I liked him. A man of style, an interesting man, star quality, star power. But while he was alive, he gave a series of very cringy interviews where you could tell he thought he was very, very smart and doing something, and he was not.
No, he was an airhead.
He was a himbo.
Yes.
A very musically talented himbo. I love T-Rex. I think T-Rex is great.
But this is, I think, right, like, he can't stay in his lane, because what he really should have marketed himself as a teeny bopper.
He really should have, yes.
And people would have been like, oh my God, like that's...
Yeah, he was a very pretty man.
Yeah.
His death, very tragic.
How did he die?
He died in a car accident in a Mini versus Tree.
Mini versus Tree?
With his girlfriend. His girlfriend lived.
That's nice.
I know. Good for her. Very, very sad.
All right. So speaking
anyway,
of car crashes, Kosovo, 1998.
Yeah. It's pretty bad. So today, everybody, we're getting to part 4 of our multi-part series on Yugoslavia. And today we are starting with 1999, actually, the NATO war.
Yes.
So, do you want to do a recap of where we kind of are up to this point?
First part,
Tito versus Nazis.
Tito versus Nazis.
Tito wins. Nazis bad.
Immediately starts squabbling with Stalin and the USSR over how to administer Albania.
Yes, because he becomes besties with Hoxha.
Yes.
And they're kikiing, and Stalin is like, maybe slow your roll, babes.
Yeah, I also, like, it does feel weird to me for a bunch of people who are not in Albania to be like, who should administer this random country?
Yes.
I feel like that's, yeah.
Oh, David and I, our position on the Tito-Stalin split is we see both sides.
It is unfortunate, and they probably should have just gotten over their shit.
Yes, it's very sad. And then, so the end result is that the USSR sanctions them.
Yes. Yugoslavia becomes one of the founding charter members of the United Nations.
Because the USSR sanctioning them sends them straight into the arms of the United States, who's like, this is useful. Even though they're communists, we can work with this.
And for a while, thriving market socialism that is at odds with our general images of socialism happens in Yugoslavia. However,
material conditions, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Their unique conditions being they were fucking sanctioned by the USSR.
However, in order to industrialize the country, they take out millions upon millions of dollars in IMF and World Bank loans.
Correct.
Which means that as the Soviet Union drifts into its dotage, I'm going to say from about when was the Cuban Missile Crisis? 1960?
Yeah. You think then?
I don't know.
I think all Khrushchev. I think it's all Khrushchev.
That is
that era.
Yeah, and then it's just like a slow drift.
Yeah, I guess I could see this.
From that point on. But World War II was really the killing the Nazis was kind of the.
Hey, look, I think Stalin.
You have a lot of There's a friend of mine was just like, this is why everyone calls Madeline a tanky on the internet.
Well, when you learn about Stalin, you too will get called a tanky on the internet. Because how do you learn about the Stalin era of leadership in the USSR and not feel compelled to defend it?
I mean, I have mixed feelings about it. I don't think it's nice to throw Lukash in a gulag, but
well, maybe he deserved it.
I mean, you do hate the Frankfurt School.
I hate the Frankfurt School.
It wasn't really the Frankfurt School, but it was adjacent.
Well, I'm just saying. Sometimes people, real annoying. I deal with them on the internet all the time. And you reach a point where you're like, I get it. I would gulag these people. If I had the power of gulag, some of these people would get gulagged.
Yeah. Maybe don't kill Isak Babel. That feels mean to me.
Yeah.
He was just a nice, weird little nebbish guy. Anyway.
Hey, look, you gotta break a few eggs.
I'm doing a recap that is getting way too in the fuck.
All right.
Okay, so
Yugoslavia gets thrown into the arms of the IMF
And as a consequence of which, the IMF, the World Bank, organized by NATO, especially under the auspices of Germany and the United States,
Yeah.
essentially restructures the entire economy, or like forces the entire economy of Yugoslavia to restructure, and also through NED funding and like various like bullshit intelligence operations, voice independence movements on the various like ethnic enclaves of Yugoslavia.
Yes.
That gets us to the 90s.
Exactly. So Yugoslavia originally had 6 different
So
kind of states.
we got Croatia, Slovenia, Bosnia,
Bosnia, Herzegovina. Yeah. We got them all. Yeah.
We
missed a couple. Yeah.
Wow.
So they have successfully, by this point, partitioned off and driven these independence movements into 4 of these areas. So only 2 remaining areas are officially Yugoslavia. The other 4 breakaway areas have become their own capitalist states now, encouraged by the United States and Germany, to varying degrees of success. Croatia seems to be doing okay. Slovenia seems to be doing okay. The other areas, not so much. In Bosnia, they're just committing genocides against each other.
It's
the Bosnian genocide occurs. These guys fucking slaughter a bunch of Bosnian Muslims, but it's not out of nowhere, right? The Bosnian Muslims had killed like 25,000 Bosnian Serbs. I mean, it's just like this whole mess of people slaughtering each other.
Yes.
Now, what we're going to see later that's important about the Bosnian genocide is that the whole world is going to try to pin it on somebody who, by all accounts from the ICJ, from even American guys high up in the government, everybody's kind of like, look, this guy, he's not perfect. Who's perfect? But he had nothing to do with this.
And this is
Milosevic.
So when you proposed this episode, many months ago,
what did you say?
Madeline, you have to tell me now. You have to tell me now. And I wasn't like, no.
I was just honest with you.
No, I was just like, I wasn't no, but I was like, this is going to take a lot of defending if this is where we're going, and I think this is where we're going. If we're doing a Justice for Slobodan Milosevic episode, you have to tell me now. And you said, well, I don't know.
No, there's a little, look, here's the thing. It actually doesn't take that much defending. Because when the Bosnian genocide occurred, it happened not in Yugoslavia. These areas had broken away from Yugoslavia, been put under NATO colony status. They had become basically NATO colonies ruled by NATO, not communist, capitalist, not a part of Yugoslavia anymore. And what happens under NATO rule, now turned capitalist, a fucking genocide occurs.
Yes.
So this has nothing to do with one of the regional leaders of Yugoslavia, a country which these people are no longer a part of anymore.
Yes, though I do remember we ended last time on this like extraordinarily like confusing note of like, well, it seems like the Yugoslav army might have been sending. No. Okay. No. I was so very confused about what the fuck you were doing.
So the only thing the ICJ ever said, because the ICJ did a whole investigation into the Bosnian genocide, and they were like, Yugoslavia had nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
So the only thing they even noted where they're like, maybe, is that theoretically it could have been avoided if the remaining areas of Yugoslavia had not still been kind of working with and open to like rebel groups who wanted to stay a part of Yugoslavia.
Okay.
But it's not like the people who carried out the genocide were military, some members of the military of the new breakaway country that formed under NATO guidance in Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Okay.
That had nothing to do with Yugoslavia.
I think like the structure of the argument is so bizarre.
I mean, it's really, when you learn about it, it's bizarre we ever tried to pin this on Milosevic. And you see why even high-ranking U.S. government officials are like, yo, this is crazy. This guy didn't have shit to do with it. So one of the bonus episode things that I was talking to David about, which I'm going to pull up our text because I always forget this guy's name. Ramsey Clark. So Ramsey Clark was a U.S. Attorney General, is that right? Yes. And he ends up writing so hard for Milosevic after this. He writes books, he writes articles. He's just like, it is crazy that we tried to pin the Bosnian genocide on Milosevic. This makes no sense. He like quits his job over it. Like, he does a whole 180, and he's like, you know what? I am now actually convinced not only did Milosevic have nothing to do with this is crazy, I am now fighting an anti-imperialist world battle. And he becomes, like, so fucked up over the Bosnian genocide and what happened to what NATO did to Yugoslavia and trying to pin it all on Milosevic, that he literally becomes like the biggest America hater on the planet after this.
I mean, good for him.
He has a huge change of heart.
I believe this is the opposite of a heel turn. This is when a heel becomes a baby face.
Yes. He finds good. He finds communist, anti-imperialist Jesus in the end.
I can't remember what it's called when a heel becomes a baby face.
I have no idea.
Yeah, but
I mean, all I know is this vaguely has something to do with boxing, maybe?
This is wrestling.
Wrestling. Well, so I got nothing.
Like WWE.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
I feel like WWE is kind of up your alley.
I mean, yeah, I definitely, when it was still called WWF before they got sued by the World Wildlife Federation, yeah, and had to change the name, I was very into it. But unfortunately, my favorite wrestler was Hulk Hogan.
Mm-hmm.
Very white trash coded. It's just my upbringing.
I mean, we did a whole fucking thing about.
I know we did.
Okay, so where the fuck are we?
So this brings us to 1999. Yugoslavia has been broken apart. 4 areas have broken away into their own nations. Only 2 areas of Yugoslavia remain. They've been aggressively destabilized by NATO, and all hell is breaking loose. And this brings us to 1999, the NATO war on Yugoslavia. So NATO is cracking down on dissent in its occupied territories, basically. They've got these 4 territories they're occupying and administering. They are now breakaway independent capitalist countries that used to be a part of communist Yugoslavia. And some people in these areas are like not happy that communism is gone, that they're no longer able to be a part of Yugoslavia, that NATO is here. And furthermore, that things like a genocide have occurred specifically in an area that was supposed to be under UN peacekeeping.
Mm-hmm.
So the area this happened in, the UN was supposed to be enforcing peace because of heightened ethnic tensions in the area, and they just were nowhere to be seen.
Yes.
So people are mad, and there are uprisings going on. So NATO is cracking down on all of the dissent with just the most draconian shit you can imagine. Just like nobody's allowed outside, like nobody's allowed media, like only we write the media. Nobody's allowed their own elections. NATO is your god now. Just like all this crazy shit going on to try to quell the angry masses.
You mean OTAN is their god?
OTAN is their god. Exactly.
I feel like OTAN, to my American ears, OTAN does sound more...
Sounds better than NATO.
Well, it sounds more like a god. It sounds like Odin. Or
yeah, it does. That's true. Yes. So the USA starts pressuring former parts of Yugoslavia, places like Slovenia, to undo their massive social safety net that still remains. So remember, Croatia and Slovenia economically had been doing the best when they were part of Yugoslavia. When they break away, they're still doing pretty well. But their economy is good, but they still have in place those socialist-era giant social safety nets. And the United States is like, hey, you got to get rid of that. We're doing austerity politics, austerity economics. You got to stop paying for people in your country to have shit like healthcare and housing and jobs.
Well, that seems like actually totally reasonable. That I have recently joined the Mount Pelerin Society.
What the fuck is that?
It's the
pen company?
No, it's the Milton Friedman.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think I was thinking of Mont Blanc.
Oh, it's because I made this stupid fucking Mont Blanc. I can't remember. I made this fucking Mont Blanc joke last week. Anyway, okay, go on.
Okay, so while that's happening, the United States, meanwhile, is saying, really, it's not our territories that just experienced an ethnic-based genocide that have the problem with ethnic cleansing. It's not the NATO-led territories. Yugoslavia has the problem with ethnic cleansing, really, if you think about it.
I mean, I love this as a kind of, like, ontology philosophy question, because it's like, all of these places were once Yugoslavia.
Yes.
And so they're really just sort of like, well, if you think about it, at some point, all of this was Yugoslavia, and they're doing ethnic cleansing in parts of what we are very accustomed to calling Yugoslavia.
So it's kind of like, you think about it. Yes. And they specifically are also like, the remaining Yugoslavia is also full of ethnic tensions, and we got to step in. Now, what's important to note is that this area of Yugoslavia had like what, a 20-year run before the communists took over. And the reason the communists took over is because the king fled during World War II. The whole government fled, and then the communists were who stayed and fought the Nazis, and then the war was over, and they were the only remaining government, right? Kind of unique revolution. So they had ethnic tensions in the region from the jump. That's actually why they became Yugoslavia. They were a bunch of smaller countries of kind of marginalized and oppressed ethnicities, and they were like, we're going to have more power on the global stage if we come together, even before the communists were there. Now, the communists, what they had brought to the table is they were like, we have a bigger project, a bigger plan, and we are going to come up with a framework to deal with the discrepancies between these ethnicities and nationalities, and nobody's going to fucking talk about it because we're working towards something better. And this technique actually had worked very, very well.
Mm-hmm.
So while the area had a history of ethnic tension, the communists, under their guidance, it was actually really chill. As chill as it could be for a bunch of ethnicities that had long-standing beef with each other.
Okay.
And this is what we actually see communism, because of Lenin's right to self-determination for oppressed nations being a fundamental addition to Marxist-Leninist thought. There is a framework in Marxist-Leninism specifically to deal with this issue. And we see that that framework works really well. Like when we did our Armenian genocide episode, during the USSR, Azerbaijan and Armenia, they might have had beef with each other, but it wasn't the full-out fucking ethnic cleansing shit show that happened after the USSR fell.
Yeah, I mean, there was like, right, I think
they had little skirmishes here.
Well, and there was like, right at the end of World War One, we don't really need to rehash this, but there was like this thing where like, a bunch of Armenians maybe killed a bunch of Azerbaijanis in the Nagorno-Karabakh region, and then like the Azerbaijanis like they decided to do mini genocide in like they were having Azerbaijan and Armenia definitely were having ethnic issues, but it was that's what I mean, where like there was little flare-ups and stuff, but it was nowhere near what happened after the USSR was dissolved. Where
like full-on wars were breaking out. I mean, it was like wild. And so what we see is that even though obviously these prejudices and biases still exist and nothing is perfect, what we see consistently throughout history is that Marxism-Leninism does a better job at mitigating specifically ethnic conflict in a region, because it is one of the only current political ideologies that has a strong framework built into it for how you're supposed to handle these things.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, Gregory Suni, who I relied on for a lot of my research when we were doing that, when he wrote a bunch of articles about like contemporary Armenia, Azerbaijan stuff, and what he pointed out, and this I promise is relevant to this, is he was like, all of these ethnicities interpenetrate in terms of like territory for generations, and the sort of structural hardening of like ethnic tension is like a phenomenon that is peculiar to, let's call it, post 1990-ish.
Yes, exactly. Timeline-wise, yes, exactly. So Yugoslavia experienced the same thing. So for the United States to be like, oh, the remaining parts of Yugoslavia are just these places ravaged by ethnic conflict, one ignores that the NATO-occupied lands were dealing with huge outbursts of ethnic cleansing, ethnic tension, literally genocide, but not just like the genocide, like violence everywhere. Like there's a bunch of ethnic minorities going on. I think we think like the Bosnian genocide as though it was like one thing that happened. No. We're talking like so many different forms of ethnic violence happening in the NATO-occupied territories at this time. Meanwhile, Croatia is just basically doing Nazi shit again.
Yeah.
They're just like, woohoo, we're back, baby.
Stashi.
Yeah, they're going back to their like fucking weird World War II Nazi roots. I mean, it's
they
all
like
chaos.
take down all the like communist era statues and put up like new shit? Is this something I remember from last?
That's definitely Ukraine did that, but maybe Croatia did.
I just only got to remember you saying.
Yeah, that probably happened as well. So, so whatever the case, the U.S. media is playing real fast and loose with the facts here. And they come in and they go, you know what? We have to intervene in Yugoslavia, the two remaining provinces of Yugoslavia. Otherwise, someone's going to commit genocide. And it's like, babe, someone already committed genocide under your watch in an area you made break away from Yugoslavia.
I'm going to say, just as like the track record on NATO, specifically OTAN, preventing genocide,
real bad. They have not proven this is a thing they can do. They've proven they can exacerbate genocide. They can encourage genocide.
Absolutely.
They can get in there, really confuse things, fuck them up. Maybe a genocide comes out.
maybe some people make money off of weapon sales to do the genocide.
To do the genocide, exactly. So this is really strange that NATO is like, well, it's the remaining parts of Yugoslavia that are dealing with the ethnic tensions, and they might have a genocide if we don't intervene. It's like, babe, focus on your own work. You already got the 4 breakaway states, and you're not handling them well.
I think this is really an instance where it's like I feel like I want to be a guidance counselor
To NATO.
And listen and be like, listen, your genocide scores are really bad. I don't think you're going to get into no genocide college. I think maybe a trade school.
Yes, start real low.
Maybe go to community college for a couple of years. Find yourself.
Yeah, you don't go to Yugoslavia. Don't even apply. Don't get in there. But this is not what happens. So their primary concern, according to Western media, was Bosnian Muslims being oppressed by Serbs. And Serbs were publicly accused of committing all of these atrocities throughout everywhere at the time, right? Mass rape, obviously mass murder. And in 1991 to 1993, Bosnian Serb military forces of 30,000 people were said to have raped between 20,000 to 100,000 Muslim women. And they were saying that a Bosnian Serb commander was telling people to go forth and rape. The source of this could never actually be proven, though. A bunch of news sources ended up publishing retractions later. So it was just like this fever ramp up regarding the actual real shit that was happening in the regions that previously had been Yugoslavia, that was like this disinformation spew slop. And it kind of reminds me, reading about it, of what we encountered during the War on Terror, where everything, like the countries involved were getting real loosey-goosey.
Oh, yeah. I mean, and it was like, do you remember Anthrax?
Yes, I definitely remember
Anthrax.
The
metal band.
Yes.
The Scare, which like it seemed to just come and go.
Yeah, and it's like everybody thought they were gonna have anthrax for like a summer.
Yeah, I remember my sister coming home from Mills with rolls of duct tape so as to tape our windows.
Oh, so the anthrax wouldn't get in. Wow.
Because apparently they were going to crop dust us with anthrax.
But then you ask you're like, who is getting us? And everybody's like, Iraq and Afghanistan.
As much like
and not ISIS, Al Qaeda.
Yeah.
And like it was all these things where you're like, how does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like if Iraq did 9/11 and has weapons of mass destruction, or was it? And then we went to war in Afghanistan.
No, I mean
Al Qaeda was like not actually any of these governments.
I don't think that they ever tried to make an argument that Iraq did 9/11. I think it was like, well, it was like, we've got the ball rolling.
Let's just go So this is kind of though the same thing that I feel like they're playing really, really loose with the countries involved here and what's going on. And it's just this chaos, confusion, disinformation to where the average American is just like, something's happening over there.
Yeah.
Sounds bad.
This, right, to whatever degree the American public's consent needed to be manufactured or whatever, not something that's aged well.
Yeah.
Talk about managing consent. But
so it's like they're just like, oh my God, this horrible thing's happening. This horrible thing's happening. We gotta go in there. You don't understand. All this horrible shit's happening. And it's not like horrible shit wasn't happening, but the horrible shit that was happening was directly caused by the United States destabilizing the region.
No, that seems like very, and like I always want to say the United States, NATO, Germany, the IMF, World, right? The United States is like a synecdoche for a larger.
It's so true. It's all of these things together. So also, it's worth noting, and I always talk about this. Sometimes when you talk about war, people will be like, "But what about in this war? This side committed this atrocity," and you're like, "It's fucking war. Everybody's committing atrocities." The idea that there is a noble way to do a war is frankly delusional. Nobody is playing as close as they should to any sort of international war playbook. Their goal is literally to go murder a bunch of people. They are doing horrible shit. Anytime there is war, women are sexually assaulted during war on any side. I don't care what fucking army it is. It's one of the first things that happen. Horrible things are happening all the way around. So whenever the United States tries to paint, or the West tries to paint, one side of the people doing war as doing war more mean, this is something I'm always intensely skeptical of, because I'm like, who the fuck is doing war nice? The closest argument I've ever seen to that is Iran sending everybody text messages in advance, going, we're going to fuck your shit up, get out of there. And even then I was like, well, that's kind of nice, actually. I would like a text message if that was going to happen.
I
think it's pretty rare.
Can you imagine, like, let's say you're a public transportation type person.
Yeah.
And you get the text message and you're like, well, shit. I can't really think of a fucking. I guess they were like texting like Saudi Arabia, so
yeah.
But no, for some reason I just got horribly reminded of that New York Times piece, like the scream from the whatever thing about October 7th.
Oh God, yes. So, and this is the thing too. It's like sexual violence against women occurs in war on every single side. I don't care who you are. I don't care if it's a country you're rooting for or not. It's going to happen. It's a thing that happens. And this idea that it is weaponized by the West to justify imperialist aggression that disproportionately harms more women in the end is so fucking dystopian and crazy to me. Like, you don't care about women. You don't care about sexual violence towards women. The majority of the sexual violence women in the world experience is from their fucking domestic partners. In the United States, it was literally legal to rape your wife most states in, like, my grandma's lifetime. Like, these people don't give a shit about women. So the fact that they're weaponizing, and women are being assaulted. You're like, yeah, no shit, it's a war that you guys started. That's what happens during war. You don't care about these people. And it's so deeply offensive to me every time people bring this up.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it's a good reason to be like, I generally speaking am anti-war.
Yeah, generally speaking, unless you were running like a revolution to liberate yourself from the oppression of the owning class, war is best to be avoided at all costs.
Yeah,
and that's why when people ask me about Russia and Ukraine, I'm like, well, one side tried to negotiate multiple times to not go to war, and the other said, fuck you, we're not talking to you.
Yeah.
So, out of the two, I'm inclined to slightly prefer the side that tried to avoid war, because war is bad. Shocking to nobody. War is bad. Okay, so all of this combo is going on. Meanwhile, the Western press is not really talking about the fact that there are straight up Nazis in Croatia. That NATO created this random new Nazi state. That there's Bosnian Nazis running around too in the NATO territories.
Absolutely.
And that these people are trying to ethnically cleanse Serbs out of the NATO regions and build ethno states in fucking Croatia and shit. Nobody's talking about this. Nobody's like, wait, NATO, it seems like you kind of created a bunch of Nazi like ethno state ambition in your controlled territories. Nobody is mentioning this in the Western press.
It is. I mean, it is like, it's they're doing historical reenactment.
Yes. So what they're really trying to do is make the whole mess that was created in Yugoslavia look like there's a clear-cut good guy and bad guy.
Yeah.
And there's not. And this is the thing to take from this. It's not that, there was no Bosnian genocide or like one side's actually a victim. It's that there is no like clear-cut good guy, bad guy. There's a fucking huge mess that occurred. And that's the biggest takeaway from this. So rather than calling it what it really was, which is just like this mess created by Western meddling, they should not have even been there and should have just left Yugoslavia the fuck alone. The media in the West needed to spend a lot of energy demonizing just one party involved, and that was the Serbs. That was the fall guy. They're like, the Serbs are the bad guy. We've decided. There's one bad guy. Everybody else angels. And
I gotta say this because this is when I was reading the Perengi book, I was like, what a different time the 90s were. We were like concerned about the lives and welfare, albeit cynically, of Muslims.
Yes. I mean, but we don't actually care.
I mean, like, albeit cynically is understatement of the year, but like...
Yes, exactly. But this thing, we don't actually care about these people. And this is the same thing when people try to peddle that weird Donald Trump conspiracy theory about the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. You know about this?
Donald Trump and...
Oh, yeah. Donald Trump paid this right-wing kook from Germany named Adrian Zanz, who claims he was on a mission sent by God.
We talked about Adrian Zanz.
Right. So Donald Trump is the one who created this whole thing because of ETIM, the East Turkestan Islamic movement, this whole fucking mess. But when you look at him and he's like, and the Chinese are doing genocide against the Uyghur Muslims, you're like, when the fuck have you ever cared about Muslims and Chinese Muslims at that? Come on. We're supposed to believe all of a sudden the United States cares what happens to Muslims in China?
No, I mean,
what happens to Muslims at home?
There are some people in Dearborn who would vehemently agree with you.
I'm just saying. Okay, it's very politically useful and inconsistent. So They are going all in to try to make it look like there's big bad that needs to be stopped, and it is the Serbs. The Serbs are the big bads. They have to stop. There's no mention that they created a clusterfuck of a mess. Now, another concern is that the Kosovo Albanians are being ethnically cleansed by the Bosnian Serbs too. And both of these are reasons bouncing back and forth, right? That we kind of see. So at the same time, the U.S. is condoning while all this is happening. This is a big point Parenti has, which is that the United States does not have fucking benevolent goals here. And so Parenti says, look, while this is going on, the U.S. is literally backing Indonesian slaughter of East Timorese people. Timorese.
Yes.
It's the first time saying it out loud. In the summer of 1999, working with Turkey, as they ethnically repressed the Kurds throughout the 90s. Turkey was a NATO member. They would assist in the bombing of Yugoslavia also that was going to come. Like, Turkey was doing ethnic cleansing. The United States does not give a fuck about ethnic cleansing, right? So, this is basically written about in the Parenti book. Parenti says that British writer Joan Phillips questions the media's selective perceptions at this time about what's going on in Yugoslavia. And she says, people on all sides have lost everything. Their families, homes, land, possessions, health, dignity. So why do we hear little or nothing about the suffering endured by the Serbs? Western journalists go to Bosnia to get a story, but they have just one story in mind. The Serbs are the bad guys, the Muslims are the victims. Their governments have all declared the Serbs to be the guilty party in Yugoslavia, and journalists, almost without exception, have swallowed the story without question. That's why they only see what they want to see. Serbian atrocities everywhere and Serbian victims nowhere. And again, none of this is to say that Serbians didn't do anything wrong. The whole point of what Parenti's arguing and what Joan Phillips is arguing is that there is no clear-cut good guy, bad guy. Everyone's a good guy, everyone's a bad guy. Everyone's a victim, everyone's a perpetrator in this situation. You can find perpetrators and victims of every single ethnic group here throughout all of these territories and areas because it's a clusterfuck nightmare of a bunch of people trying to kill each other.
And like, if we are trying to pick bad guys, it is the structural like attempt to create failed states out of the former Yugoslavia.
Right. NATO is the bad guy.
Yeah.
NATO is the bad guy here. And all of these people in former Yugoslavia are the victims of NATO. So there were Serbian victims. Definitely, we do know that because the conflict was not actually one-sided. It was, though, ethnic tensions exacerbated by Western meddling in a region that previously had managed to live in relative peace, relatively under socialism. So some of the Serbian victims that were totally ignored in this process would include, in November of 1991, 27 Serbian villages in Croatia that were given 48-hour evacuation notices, and 17 of the villages were then burned to the ground by Croatian troops. Those Croatian Nazis doing their thing. Bosnian Serb women in the town of Novigrad said they were repeatedly gang raped by local Croatian militias, some of whom were their neighbors. One woman, Gordana, age 36, described her ordeal and said, when I screamed, one of them smashed my head against the floor. It all lasted 3 hours. Afterwards, they said I would have an Ustashi child.
Oh, boy.
Mm-hmm. In 1992, BBC filming of an ailing, elderly Bosnian prisoner of war in a Serb concentration camp proved in his later identification by relatives to actually be a retired Yugoslav army officer, Branko Velek, a Bosnian Serb held in a Muslim detention camp, but the BBC represented it like it was the reverse. Like he was a Muslim held in a Serb camp.
Gotcha.
Yes, but actually it was the opposite. He was a Serb held in a Muslim camp. Among the wounded Muslim toddlers and infants hit by a sniper fire while on a Sarajevo bus in August 1992, actually, not all of them were Muslim. There were a number of Serb children who were also killed in that. This was not revealed until sometimes later, and the quote from it being revealed says, television reporters identified the funeral of one of the victims as Muslim, but the Orthodox cross and other unmistakable Serbian Orthodox funeral rituals told a different story. So the journalists were kind of like, okay, very obviously this was just children died.
Yeah.
And there was multiple different ethnicities of children. When the thousands of Serb civilians in eastern Herzegovina were expelled from their homes in February of 1993, the Western media didn't say anything. Every Serbian home between Metkovic and Konjic in the Neretva Valley was burned to the ground. In contrast to the endless stories about the plight of Muslim civilians in eastern Bosnia, we were not treated to a single story about the plight of Serbs in eastern Herzegovina, is from the Parenti book. Also in February 1993, the Associated Press, citing only a Bosnian government source, reported that starving Muslims in eastern Bosnia were resorting to cannibalism, and the story ended up getting into the headlines in the USA. Hardly any attention, though, was paid to the emphatic denial made the following day by UN officials in Bosnia, who had actually gone to these supposedly starving villagers to be like, oh my God, you're starving to death. And they're like, wait a minute, none of these people are starving. They have a ton of food supplies. They have livestock. They have chickens. This is totally made up. But nobody really ever issued a story being like, oopsie, they weren't starving and cannibalizing each other. That was a lie, huh? And the UN were the ones who were like, oh, it turns out they're not starving or cannibalizing each other.
Yeah.
But the media...
Well, I mean, do you think the UN was like, listen, we're not trying to give them money for food. So, we're just not gonna, like, look, they have chickens.
They've got chickens. No, I mean, I think...
No, I mean, like, I think that it's like, hey, look, we'll fuck up your country, but, like, you guys got food.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it also, though, reminds me of how people talk about Cuba. Like, the United States is always talking about Cuba starving, Cuba starving, Cuba starving. And you go to Cuba and you're like, no, they actually have plenty of food, but they don't have a lot of food diversity because they can only eat the shit that's native to their island because you won't let them trade with the world.
Which is a tiny-ass fucking island.
Right. So they're really sick of fish and pork, but they've got a fuck ton of fish and pork. Like, they're not going to die, but, like, they can have some dignity. Let them import some shit.
That sounds so good. Like,
The food was very good. I did not eat fish and pork because I'm vegan, but they cooked me vegan food the whole time I was there, and it was very, very nice. But yeah, it's more like that. It's like they're not starving. They're just like, yeah, their shit's fucked up from international political issues, and it's not as easy as they would like. So in early August of 1993, a photo caption in the New York Times described a Croat woman from Bosnia grieving her son who was killed in Serbian attacks. But it turned out that Bosnia had been the scene of bloody fighting between Muslims and Croats, resulting in 34 Bosnian Croat deaths, including the son of the woman in the picture. So the killings were done by Muslim forces, and Serbs were not involved at all.
Okay.
So the Times printed a retraction the following week, but it, was kind of buried in the mess, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's right. Like, the Times does that, all the newspapers.
Yeah,
where
the retraction's pretty common, yeah. So, but, it was a lot of stuff like this going on. On August 6, 1993, the Times ran another picture of a weeping mother, this time accompanied by her two children, and the caption read, Bosnian Serb forces demand homes in the central Bosnian town of Prozor to be vacated by August 4th. But in fact, Prozor was not controlled by Bosnian Serbs. It was controlled by Croat forces. Mm-hmm. The Croatians really got off easy here is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
The Croatians were doing a bunch of weird fucked up shit. Mm-hmm. And the United States is like, they're totally fine. They're cool. I'm vouching for them. Don't worry, we'll just pretend they're Bosnian Serbs.
That's so like...
It's crazy. I mean, it's not like it was all them. I don't want to pretend like it's some conspiracy and Bosnian Serbs didn't do anything wrong, but...
And it's not like every Croatian was just
I love Nazi.
Ironing their Ustashi uniform and saying, like, I've had this in the closet for like 40 fucking years.
But there were a lot of Nazis, a lot of Croat Nazis running around at the time that the West was not reporting on, is the moral of the story. Serb units had been nowhere in the town, or even near it. So in October 1993, masked Croat soldiers killed an estimated 80 Muslims in the central Bosnian village of Stupni Do. Survivors reported witnessing the Croats throwing the corpses of children, women, and elderly civilians into burning buildings. Despite threats from Croatian troops, a Swedish UN military unit managed to reach the village to determine what happened. And as reported in the New York Times, they witnessed the aftermath of the wrath of the Croatian nationalist soldiers who came to rape, cut throats, smash children's skulls, to machine gun whole families. That is a quote from the New York Times. They finally came forward and said this. But this is not how it was remembered or discussed in a major way in the West. Brigadier Angus Ramsey of Britain, Chief of Staff of the UN's Bosnia Command, called it a disgusting war crime, named the perpetrators as the Bobovok Brigade of the Croatian Nationalist Army in Bosnia, known as the HVO, the Croatian Nazis. However, the justification for NATO going there was not like the Croatians are committing genocide. The Croatians, we created Nazi states. Sorry, are bad. This was just kind of like a throwaway thing that was reported that nobody was supposed to take seriously in any big capacity. In early November 1993, Bosnian Muslim troops stormed through an isolated Croatian district of Sarajevo, the northern end of Sarajevo, sending thousands of civilians fleeing into the countryside, leaving others hiding in cellars. There were huge reports of rapes, beatings, and looting. Some 2,000 Croats found temporary safety in Serbian-held territory southeast of Vares, which was north of Sarajevo. The Serbs expected a total of 15,000 refugees, whom they were making efforts to transport to the port city of Split in Croatia. So it was the Muslims doing something, atrocity. Everybody's doing atrocities. In August 1995, Croatian troops, fully backed by the United States military, by the way.
I'm really sorry, Madeline.
Huh.
When atrocity, everyone's doing atrocity. I just imagined you as Kathy of the
of the comic?
But like instead of ack, it was atrocity.
I mean, it's everywhere though. It is. I mean, it's horrible. It's insane. So, in August 1995, Croatian troops, backed by the U.S. military, went through the Serbian Krajina, massacred hundreds of civilians. UN patrols disinterred a bunch of fresh unmarked graves containing bodies of villagers. The EU reported evidence of atrocities. An average of 6 corpses per day continues to emerge. Many have been shot in the back of the head, had their throats slit. Others have been mutilated. Serb lands continue to be torched and looted. Okay. So in January 1996, Croatian forces slaughtered 181 Serb civilians who lived in Mrkonic Grad, a town in northwest Bosnia near the Croatian border. The murderers left fascist graffiti over the entire town. The graves were exhumed and all of the victims were identified by name, and the story went almost completely unreported. Nobody in the West really picked this up. They also talked about how once the Sarajevo suburb of Ilica was turned over to the Muslim Croat Federation in March of 1996, hundreds of, quote, Muslim thugs, as the New York Times called them, armed with guns, knives, and grenades, swaggered through the streets, preying upon the 3,000 or so Serbs, mostly elderly or ill, that still lived there. The gangs, quote, hang signs of ownership on homes they never saw before and cart off people's belongings while the owners are out shopping for eggs. The anarchy officials feared from the transfer of Serb-held suburbs has come true here. And in the first case focusing exclusively on rape, the UN's International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia prosecuted not a Serb, but a Bosnian Croat paramilitary chief, sentencing him to 10 years in prison for failing to stop subordinates' 1993 rape of a Bosnian Muslim woman. And Parenti kind of says, look, again, it cannot be said too many times. To reject the demonized image of Milosevic that we're going to see come out of this later, which we haven't got to yet, and of the Serbian people in general, is not to idealize either, nor claim that Yugoslav forces have not committed crimes. It is merely to challenge the one-sided propaganda that laid the grounds for the imperialist dismemberment of Yugoslavia and NATO's far greater criminal onslaught. And that, I think, is really the point to hammer home. Like, if there's only one paragraph you remember to orient you on all of it, that's the one.
Mm-hmm. So this is like asterisk footnote on your, if you just do whatever the opposite or believe whatever the opposite of the United States tells you on foreign policy, you're good thing.
Yeah.
It's just, if it's NATO, they're probably fucking bad.
It's probably bad. They're up to bad shit. NATO's up to bad shit. NATO is up to bad shit. So, January 1999. This is when I say the sales pitch starts for the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia.
This is when I remember Clinton getting on, like being on like fucking, or being on NPR. He wasn't on NPR, but he was like,
they were playing it.
They were playing his speeches, being like, we have to go into Kosovo.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. How'd you like my Clinton impression?
That was a Clinton impression?
It was spot on.
Oh my God.
That
was horrible.
I was holding a saxophone. You can't see.
The saxophone would have really sold it. So to sell military intervention in Yugoslavia, NATO, the West in general, would have to craft this story, again, that there were very clear-cut good guys that needed defending and very clear-cut bad guys that needed hurting, and that it definitely was not that way because of anything the West had done. And they would need to pitch this instead of, again, the mess that it was, which was ethnic tensions everywhere, exacerbated by Western intervention. Okay, so the Albanian separatist fascists, they would have to make the good guys. These were fascists, all right? Like the KLA, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
The Bosnian Muslims and the Albanian people, they would be the victims. and Yugoslavia would somehow end up being the bad guys on all accounts on every end of every conflict in this situation, even countries that were no longer part of Yugoslavia that had been administered by NATO and the UN.
But as I said before, it's like once a Yugoslav, always a Yugoslav. They're just like,
right. Well, so this
yeah.
is a problem then, because you couldn't just call these people Yugoslavian, because if you called the people in the former territories Yugoslavian, next thing you know, you got to call everybody Yugoslavian, and that includes the Albanians and the Bosnian Muslims, because they were Yugoslavian before too. So the Yugoslavian military and police just get called Serbian or Serbs no matter what their ethnicity is.
Yeah.
Which is a really weird turn of phrase that ends up happening. And yeah, the area was mostly Serbian, but lots of different ethnic groups were in the Yugoslavian army. Hungarians, Turks, Egyptians, Roma people, Slovaks, Guarani, Jews, even Croats and Albanians, right? Because it's for a country, Yugoslavia. It's not, like Hitlerite, ethno-state paramilitary group. It's like an official country's military.
That's not Israel.
This is not Israel. Not that one. Not that one. So the sales pitch begins to get crafted. And to do this, they call in this guy named William Walker, who had previously come under fire in El Salvador for basically doing the same thing, creating a sales pitch to sell U.S.-sponsored assassins murdering people in El Salvador.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, this guy, you want to spin a yarn, this is your guy. He can make any war sound like a good idea.
The Clash are no longer around to write a goddamn song about it.
What is that song?
I can't remember. There's some fucking El Salvador song.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So Walker went to a village in Kosovo that was completely deserted. All right. And he went with a bunch of Western journalists. And he's like, I'm going to show you something you're going to write about it. And everybody back home is going to know why we have to bomb Yugoslavia. Mm-hmm. So he takes them to the bodies of 42 people that he says the Yugoslavian police have just executed.
Okay.
And this is one day after Associated Press had a TV crew who had filmed what had actually happened in the village. And it had actually been a battle. And what they had filmed was police engaging in the battle, carrying away automatic weapons, heavy machine guns after the attack. Now, the actual battle had been the KLA, remember, Nightmare Blunt rotation of all of the pimps and the fascists.
Oh, yeah. And this is how we determine that Madeline is weirdly selective about which drug dealers she likes.
Well, there's some systemic things that go into drug sales.
Yes.
Yes. So I don't think, if a pimp's selling drugs, I'm going to like him less.
Mm-hmm.
The drugs.
But you'll still take them.
No, I don't think, I don't love drugs. I'm not a drugs person.
Yeah, that's actually true. You have a I try it once and
then I'm good. I just want to know. Yeah. I want to understand, but I'm not really a drugs person.
This is a weird aside. I had an ex-girlfriend once who told me that whenever she was at a party and so her friends were doing drugs, she would just watch them to make sure they didn't overdose before she took drugs. So she was just can you imagine just your friend just sitting next to you at a party being like, how you feeling?
Wow, that's pretty sinister.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the king's taste tester for the meal.
Yeah.
She made all her friends that with drugs.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I kind of respect it. It's weird as hell, though.
It's weird as fucking hell.
It's weird as hell. So he takes them there to this place where the KLA, who was the Nightmare Blunt rotation of pimps and fascists, who within Yugoslavia's borders had been trying to stage an uprising, they're in there. They had been fighting with the Yugoslavian police. And remember, they had been doing so much fucked up shit that the last episode we talked about how the Yugoslavian police finally were like, we have to go hunt down the KLA and get them out of our country because they're trying to destroy us.
Yeah.
They are literally doing terrorism in our country. So this was the conflict between the Yugoslavian police and the KLA terrorist group of psychotic fascists and pimps that had been battling in Yugoslavia that the West was going to use as justification to show that the Yugoslavian police had to be stopped.
Mm-hmm.
That they were hunting down the poor, innocent fascist pimps and drug dealers of the KLA. Which, again, just drug dealers on your own, you definitely don't deserve to be hunted down.
Uh-huh.
All right? Okay, I'm just going to say that. But when you are a group of fascist neo-Nazi pimps...
Fascist pimp goes really hard, though, as a shitty grindcore band from, Virginia.
Okay, maybe. That might be true, actually. But, if that's the guy, I'm like, I'm not I'm not too torn up about these guys getting
Yeah.
squashed. Their little rebellion getting squashed. These aren't freedom fighters. A bunch of them are like business owners, like capitalists, like all these psychos, like bad dudes. So basically,
Sorry, the slippage there is great. They're fascists. They're pimps. They're drug dealers. They own a car dealership.
yeah, fuck them. Fuck them. You know what I mean? Fuck them. All right. So this is the fighting that's going on all throughout Yugoslavia, that the West is like, we're going to use this to make it look like Yugoslavia is so evil. And the KLA are sweet, innocent, kind-hearted, good people fighting for their freedom from Yugoslavia. It's just not what's going on. All right. So William Walker goes to this village where a shootout had occurred between the KLA and the Yugoslavian police. And he takes these 42 people and he says, look, Western journalists, look at these people. These, no mention of them in KLA, innocent villagers who lived here, just average people who were executed by the brutal, cold Yugoslavian army for no reason. Literally no reason whatsoever.
They took the pimp coat off. So.
Yeah, they hid the cane, the hat. Yeah, they were like, no, they're just normal people. We swear. The only problem was AP had been there the day before. It was like, there was like a whole shootout here. We reported on it already, but whatever. So the KLA returned back to the village the next morning when the police had cleared out, basically.
Yeah.
So major European news outlets were like, hey, this story's not adding up, Walker, because we actually have the AP footage that shows something totally different occurred. And it seems like the KLA returned to the village the next morning to clean everything up and make it look like they were innocent victims. But like, we have the AP footage showing that they actually initiated a straight up shootout with the Yugoslavian police. So the AP was like, we were there all day. There were no mass executions of 42 villagers. Other journalists were also like, hey, we were there and we didn't see this either. Journalists also were like, there's not really a lot of cartridges laying around for a mass execution to have happened. There's this ditch where all these people were supposedly taken and killed. There's like no blood over here at all. Like, we've seen mass executions before. None of this crime scene is consistent with mass executions occurring. They also were like, all these regular citizens from this village fled the day before the fighting took place because they heard that this was coming. So why would these 42 people have stayed?
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't really make sense. And the Yugoslav government was like, we're going to autopsy these bodies because this is not adding up with what this William Walker guy is saying. Now, the autopsy report showed that all wounds had been inflicted from a distance, right? So they were not executed. It was like a shootout. And that 37 of the 40 bodies had gunpowder on their hands. So showing that they were most likely, we can't say for certain, but like, come on, give me a break, KLA fighters killed in actions, and their bodies were later placed in a ditch by the KLA members who returned the next day and staged to look like a mass execution by those people who showed up the next morning and just restaged the crime scene. So this is the kind of thing, though, that William Walker was doing to try to make it look like the big bad Yugoslavian police were actually the bad guys in the region. Now, it's worth noting that in fighting for the KLA, against the KLA, the Yugoslav army was supported by paramilitary groups from Serbia. One unit commander in the Yugoslav army named Vlada talks about this openly. And he said Serbian paramilitaries went into regions before the Yugoslav armies arrived to fight off the KLA there. Mm-hmm. He also said that innocent people definitely died in these fights, but that it was hard to know who was innocent and who was a KLA member because they were getting ambushed all the time by the KLA, and the KLA was kind of using that ambiguity to their advantage. And he seems like he has no illusions that there's a noble way to do war. He's like, yeah, it's fucking war. It was bad. People died, right? This is generally true of what anybody will tell you if they've been in a war ever. It's confusing, it's messy, it's horrible. And he said it was really hard to know who was innocent, who was setting up an ambush. He says the paramilitaries probably saved his life by going in ahead of him. And his quote is, "It was ugly, but it happened. Everyone you saw felt like an enemy. It's the worst kind of war." And he said the KLA were, quote, "not the only ones guilty for this war, but they are among them."
Yeah.
So just again, rational. Yugoslav soldiers also did loot and burn many houses, especially the big rich ones that had nice TVs, video recorders, refrigerators, tractors. Vlada said he and the people that he was with were really mad when they found large, well-furnished houses with jacuzzis that contained Albanian flags, the KLA insignia, or uniforms, or pictures of men in KLA uniforms and arms. And Vlada said he would ask himself, looking at this, they have all this already. What are they fighting for? And he would ask himself, what more do these people want? These KLA members, they have so much. What more do they want? And it would infuriate him. And he's like, yeah, it was probably part of the reason why we did steal stuff and we did loot stuff. Because what the fuck is wrong with these people? Why are they destroying our country when they have so much already? So just interesting perspective from the mind of someone who was a soldier in this. And very honest, a very honest.
That is a very honest perspective. It's also just, this is within the context of like, he is also saying, yes, innocent people died.
Yes, and that he did bad things and that the whole thing was just messy and bad.
And again, I think just hammering home the like, NATO kind of created the structural conditions for this to fucking happen. And that's what
NATO did this.
Yeah.
Yep. So February 1999, talks get held in France. And these are supposed to be negotiations, I guess. Like the Western world is like, hey, Yugoslavia, you knock it off, killing all those innocent civilians. And Yugoslavia's like, we are not intentionally killing innocent civilians. Mm-hmm. We are trying to stop the fucking KLA. It is true, maybe some civilians died in the shootouts and stuff, but we didn't initiate any of this violence. The KLA did. We're trying to clear them out of here. Like, what are you talking about? Like, this isn't our goal to go around killing our people. We have so few people left.
Well, listen, democracy is when the rebels win, always.
No matter what they're rebelling against. And this is something funny that I tell people all the time in the West. It's like, you will end up rooting for the MAGA movements of other countries because you assume, because our government in the United States is so right-wing, all of our anti-government demonstrations are necessarily left-wing because they're in contrast to it. You don't know what it's like to have a left-wing government with right-wing fascist neo-Nazis rebelling against it. You just see them and you're like, protesters, good.
I did.
And some of them are straight up fucking Nazis.
I have, my thing about the Benny Hill theme song.
Yes.
When I was watching the January 6th stuff a few years ago, Benny Hill played in my head and I was just like, this is kind of funny.
I mean, it was a little funny. It was a little funny, yes. The January 6th was a little silly, goofy. It was.
And so I was rooting for them a little.
I mean, it was interesting.
I was not in the, like, I want you guys to win way, but I was just like...
Right, like, you do something.
It's like I was like...
hope you get something that you really were. Somebody died, right?
Yes, a couple people died.
A couple people died.
Oh, yeah, which I'm not happy about.
No, that's a bummer.
But
what a kookball thing that happened.
But then it's just like, we've gone around the bend. This is really delightful.
What if they really thought that was going to be how they, like, seized the government?
I think they thought they were going to, like, find the, whiteboard on which, like, the plans to steal the election.
Oh, okay. I thought they were like, now we're in control of the government. And it's like, well, no, that's not how that works. You don't, yeah, I thought that's what was happening. Okay. Well, so NATO shows up in France and is like, Yugoslavia, shame on you. And Yugoslavia's like, are you fucking serious? We're literally trying to kill terrorists. It's messy and bad. Were mistakes made? Sure, we're not idiots. But, like, you did this. You did this to us. We don't want to be doing this. So the 5 NATO powers that show up are USA, Germany, France, Italy, and Britain. There's also a multi-ethnic Yugoslav delegation consisting of Kosovo Serbs, Roma people, Albanians, and Egyptians. And they all meet with U.S. officials, including the Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, while Britain and France act as co-chairs for this meeting. And this is theoretically negotiations, but it's not. There's nothing Yugoslavia could have done in this meeting that would have stopped the war from happening.
Well, no, I mean, essentially what the negotiations are there for is to be like, see these intransigent assholes, genociders, we must do this. They will not negotiate with us.
Yes.
Right.
It was spectacle. So the Yugoslavs put forth a number of proposals that the media didn't really report on at the time, but they were really, really rational because the Yugoslavs were like, we hate that this is happening. We don't want this to happen. So they said they wanted an agreement to stop hostilities in Kosovo and pursue a peaceful solution through dialogue. They wanted to guarantee human rights for all citizens and promote the cultural and linguistic identity of every single national community, which you're like, no, they didn't want that. They definitely wanted that. There was like the whole thing that held Yugoslavia together before. They recognized that that was integral to their whole country even existing because it started off as a multi-ethnic group with a lot of ethnic tensions. They wanted the facilitated return of all displaced citizens to their homes. They wanted media freedom, and they wanted a legislative assembly elected by proportional representation with additional seats set aside for national communities to have more of a say, which is part of the Lenin right to self-determination for oppressed people. The assembly's responsibilities would include budgeting, taxing, regulations on education, the environment, medical institutions, urban planning, agriculture, elections, property ownership, and economic, scientific, technological, and social development. Very reasonable. They're like, we too want this to end. Let's set up the solution to end it. U.S. representatives are like, absolutely fucking not. We're not looking at your shit-ass little proposal. We brought our own proposal written by the U.S. State Department.
Who is full of Yugoslav experts.
Yeah, I'm sure. So they demanded that Kosovo be completely autonomous. Right? But Kosovo was still, they wanted to have representatives in Yugoslavia and Serbia's parliaments, cabinets, and courts.
Oh, that rocks so hard.
Isn't
That's like
insane.
That's like if somehow I'm trying to figure out what that is like Mexico bopping along into the United States and being like, we would like California to be independent. However, they still get to keep their Senate seats.
Yes, exactly. This is crazy. So Yugoslavia and Serbia, though, would get no say in what happened in Kosovo.
Mm-hmm.
So Kosovo would get a say in its state and country level, but the state and country would not have any say in the city, basically. It's the kind of a way to think about this. Now, this had actually kind of been an issue earlier, if you remember back to the older episodes. It had created this issue where Serbs were not, in fact, represented by their government because Albanians in Kosovo basically were awarded veto power, and Yugoslavia needed to actually alter the rules later to make the arrangement more fair. So the U.S. State Department was basically telling them to undo that and let Albanians in Kosovo have disproportionate influence over, like, the entire region. The agreement the U.S. State Department put forward also included a whole bunch of funding that Yugoslavia was going to have to pay to Kosovo.
Mm-hmm.
So the agreement said nothing about 650,000 refugees from Kosovo that were in Serbia at the time, and it said nothing about suspending sanctions against Serbia. So the new leadership of Kosovo would also be NATO appointed.
Oh, okay. So I thought you were going to say the KLA.
No, well, they probably appoint somebody from the KLA, right? So the chief of this area would then have, quote, the authority to issue binding directives to the parties, Yugoslavia and Kosovo, on all important matters he saw fit, including appointing and removing officials and curtailing institutions. Essentially, they were demanding that Yugoslavia consent to being occupied, with Kosovo being a full NATO colony inside their borders, which is insane. So to really drive the point home, the agreement also specified NATO personnel under all circumstances and all times will be immune from jurisdiction in respect to any civil, administrative, criminal, or disciplinary offenses which may be committed by them in the Federal Republic of Yugoslavia.
Okay, I'm going to say something because we've been watching the Iran non-negotiations.
Yes.
The bizarre whatever the fuck.
Yes.
I think Iran kind of don't negotiate. Don't just be like, hey guys, no, we're not showing up at your Fakakta meeting.
Yeah. Don't even go. Yeah, don't even go. Seriously, because this is what happens. And basically, can you imagine? They're like, NATO can break any law they want in your borders and they get immunity.
Yeah.
And think about what NATO has a track record of doing.
Also, you're paying Kosovo money, but they're independent of you, but they get a representative in the Yugoslav assembly.
And they're controlled by NATO.
Yeah, don't go to the fucking negotiations.
It's horrible. So, NATO personnel, they said, should also be immune from any form of arrest, investigation, or detention by the authorities in Yugoslavia.
So,
if you're a member of NATO, you could literally go shoot somebody in the head in the middle of the street in the middle of the day, and Yugoslavia would not be able to do anything to you.
You could be Donald Trump.
NATO personnel shall enjoy, together with their vehicles, vessels, aircraft, and equipment, free and unrestricted passage and unimpeded access throughout Yugoslavia, including airspace and territorial waters.
This is
fucked. This is the craziest thing to ask for.
Can you imagine, like, you are the Pete Hegseth of 1999.
Yeah.
You're just a tipsy tulip. And you're like, I want to join NATO so bad. Like, the hijinks you would get up to under this agreement.
I mean, it's crazy. You would get into a lot of hijinks. NATO demanded free access to all areas, cities, highways, airports, and seaports of Yugoslavia. And of course, this would all be done in service to the free market gods of capitalism.
Democracy.
Under
It's democracy.
Adam Smith.
It's democracy.
The ghost of Adam Smith
It's democracy.
is administering the democracy.
I find that Adam Smith's bizarre sentimentalism has something to recommend itself, so long as it doesn't have anything to do with the fucking economy.
This is like saying you read Playboy for the articles. You read Adam Smith for his bizarre sentimentality.
No, sentimentalism as like a specific form of like ethical thought that came out of the Scottish Enlightenment in the 18th century.
Oh, see, okay, I'm not familiar with those.
It was like David Hume and all that.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I do remember Hume. Okay, well, I just want to point out there's a part of Brenty's book where he talks about this, where he calls the section "free market uber alles," and I think that's very funny.
Yes.
So that would be a great neck tattoo if anybody's looking for a neck tattoo. Free market uber alles goes hard.
I was just telling the story of the late bloomer neck tattoo,
Yes.
and I haven't done enough weird digressions this time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you can feel free.
okay,
Tell the story.
the fucking so a friend of mine's ex-boyfriend who was some kind of like weird like journalist interview guy who apparently once interviewed, I've told you this, right? Who once when I was on Molly just kept quoting old Vines at me.
I don't remember that detail. I do remember the tattoo man, but I don't remember that.
But apparently the day before he was supposed to interview Viola Davis, I think. Went and got in giant bubble letters, late bloomer tattooed on his neck.
Wild.
Apparently, if I recall the story correctly, apparently Viola Davis walked out of the interview because she was like, I can't take this one seriously.
Wow. Interesting. Wow. Free market uber alles, great neck tattoo idea. And
Get it in bubble letters.
Get it in bubble letters. This is what Prentice has. U.S. officials made their determined dedication to the free market perfectly clear. Chapter 4A, Article 1 of the agreement states in no uncertain terms, the economy of Kosovo shall function in accordance with free market principles. There was to be no restriction on the movement of goods, services, and capital to Kosovo. The citizens of Kosovo and the rest of Serbia were not troubled for their opinions on this. As with every other aspect of the agreement, matters of trade, investment, and corporate ownership were settled for them by the Western policymakers.
Which is very democratic.
Yeah. So Ronald Hatchett was like, this is not a negotiation. This was, quote, a declaration of war disguised as a peace agreement. George Kenney, who was a former U.S. State Department guy, he basically been like a desk officer for Yugoslavia in the State Department, said an unimpeachable press source who regularly travels with Secretary of State Madeleine Albright told me that a senior State Department official had bragged that the United States deliberately set the bar higher than the Serbs could accept. The Serbs needed, according to the official, a little bombing to see reason.
Mm-hmm.
So
this is every time people talk about Madeleine Albright and they're like, what a noble, dignified statesman.
No, she's a psycho.
She's like a fucking bloodstained psychopath.
Yes, and this is the thing about capitalism and girl boss shit. In order to be a girl boss under capitalism, you need to present yourself as being more psychotically masculine than the boys. And this is the whole lean in thing. This is the neoliberal version of feminism that is shoved down people's throats.
You're talking about Hillary Clinton, not the
Hillary
old
Clinton.
lady.
Oh, well, I'm talking about them all. I hit all of them. All of them. Yeah. The Google lady, Hillary Clinton, same difference. Yes.
Some would say, Madeline, in spite of your book, that you are a girl boss.
I don't think so.
I believe that the word could loosely, you boss.
I don't boss. And I don't girl. I'm not even girl.
You girl. You know. Yes, I know. I understand this. Yeah. We're using the loosest.
The lucid girl with the asterisk censored. I think it's a lot. Yeah.
And right, like I think to an untrained observer.
To an untrained observer, I'm a millionaire landlord.
That is very true. I keep waiting for someone to like call me.
To be like, where's Madeleine's millions?
Can you give us the inside scoop? We're going to do one of those like weird guys on TikTok who like just does the news, but in like a bizarre way.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, I do. I do know what you mean. Yeah. Well, obviously at this agreement, Yugoslavia is like, we can't let you take over Yugoslavia. What are you fucking talking about, NATO?
And have like a weird uneven.
Yeah, like this is crazy, and have total access to all of our land and airways and the ability for NATO members to do whatever they want in our borders without us being able to hold them accountable, and for us to just give Kosovo a bunch of money and then they become a weird NATO colony, but they still get say over our country. Like, this is crazy. We can't do this. And this is the whole point. The U.S. set it up from the jump. Of course they won't agree to this because we will go to war.
Negotiation.
Right. So, of course, they can't agree to this. So, on March 24th, the war begins. Clinton administers the orders. 11 weeks around-the-clock bombing of Yugoslavia starts.
And this is mostly in Kosovo?
Yes. And this would mark the beginning of a U.S.-EU-NATO war against the people of Yugoslavia. The NATO Kosovo force was called KFOR for short. It ends up occupying Yugoslavia. They're called in. They start occupying land. Air raid sirens go off in Pristina, Belgrade, Novi Sad, elsewhere. Just telling the citizens, take cover, you're getting bombed, right? And civilian areas. For 78 days, the planes overhead are bombing the people of Yugoslavia. They are destroying everything. They are murdering innocent civilians, all just to secure access to Balkan markets for Western capital.
Here's something that I remember very distinctly, even as like a kid or whatever, and like, I guess this is like retrospective. I do not remember a lot of like, we're bombing military targets. Base has been, right, like...
No, we bombed cities with people living in them.
Yeah, right, whereas like, we have taken out the, like, missile silos that are causing all of the, you know what I mean? Like,
yes.
Things that...
Military targets.
Granting that we are anti-genocide and civilian death.
Which is ostensibly the whole reason we're going in here.
In NATO.
Mm-hmm.
OTAN. One would expect to be like, we're bombing the cache of guns that are used to kill children.
Yeah. But no, this is not what we do. We're also, for the record, trying to control oil and gas pipelines. So that's another part of how we're doing things. So what ends up happening is NATO warplanes fly over 35,000 combat missions over Yugoslavia, targeting 200 cities and towns. Mm-hmm. They drop 20,000 tons of bombs. They target apartment buildings, schools, hospitals, factories, workplaces, bridges, refineries, the power grid, the Chinese embassy, the Belgrade TV station, even prisons and graveyards get hit. And like you said, David, these are not military targets. They claim they're not bombing civilians, but then you turn on the news and it would be another school, another hospital hit by NATO. In the name of humanitarian intervention, NATO would end up slaughtering 5,000 people.
Yeah.
So NATO used depleted uranium munitions and cluster bombs when they were destroying refineries and chemical factories. This was all causing also massive environmental destruction. Repeated attacks on oil storage tanks caused a huge environmental disaster. They said at the time was like unprecedented in the region. They poisoned the river, many rivers in the region. This kind of stuff would also make it nearly impossible for Yugoslavia to ever recover. Graffiti all over Belgrade was basically being like, fuck off NATO, fuck off United States. So the people of Yugoslavia did not welcome this. They did not view NATO as their liberators. They very much viewed it as NATO trying to wipe them off the face of the map. They also would spray paint Bill Clinton's name, just be like, fuck Bill Clinton. Every time they spray painted NATO, they'd put a swastika in place at the end. So they really were like, these people are trying to ethnically cleanse us. These are Nazis.
I was talking to my sister recently, and she was like, she was talking about like an older, more like West-wingy style of liberal that she misses and wish would come back. And she was like, I will feel very sad when Bill Clinton dies. And
That's a take.
Because Bill Clinton he played a saxophone. He rocked the vote.
He did rock the vote. He destroyed the economy.
Mm-hmm. He, I would argue, is largely responsible for skyrocketing college tuition rates.
Mm-hmm. Sexual predator. Don't forget that one.
Sexual predator.
Sex pest at best.
carried out mass civilian death, bombed Iraq. I feel like people forget that.
Yeah. He was in there too.
But my point being, but I was like, the image is so strong. He seems dumb now.
Yeah.
Like he's like not.
Well, he's really old. He looks
really,
like the Crypt Keeper.
Yeah, he is a shell of his former self.
Yes.
But God, the charisma he had, like the stranglehold he had on the nation to do all of that
and still be relatively well liked.
To commit, I mean, like the Monica Lewinsky stuff was like the least of it, but even that was assaulted.
But men were kind of like, hell yeah, brother, about that. And a lot of women were like, he's hot.
And even Bell, do you remember, have you read the Bell Hooks All About Love book where she goes in on Monica Lewinsky?
No.
It's very funny. It's
Weird.
it's like a very time capsule-y thing where it's like, that dumb bitch Monica who got between a powerful woman and her husband.
Oh my God. Oh, Bell Hooks. Oh.
Bell Hooks had some hot takes.
Wow. Okay. Well, one of the other most popular graffitis going on at this time needs a little backstory. So people started spray painting Free Texas around Yugoslavia.
I feel like I can intuitively get that.
Yes. So people in Belgrade would explain this, and they said, Texas, heavily populated by Mexicans or people of Mexican descent, many of whom suffer more serious cultural discrimination and economic adversity than Kosovo Albanians do. Should not Yugoslavia and other nations do whatever they can to make Texas into a separate polity for oppressed Mexicans? The same logic applied to the Free Corsica graffiti sprayed across the French Cultural Center, gutted during the NATO bombings, along with the U.S. and British cultural centers by outraged Yugoslavs.
I honestly was going for a, like, don't tread on me kind of Free Texas.
No.
That was the vibe. But
no.
Yeah.
They're like, this doesn't make any fucking sense.
I feel like Yugoslavians are bizarrely up on the nuances of American social.
I'm just going to say, when I was in Cuba, though, the average Cuban person knows more about American politics than the average American does, for sure. They know. Even I met other communists there from, like, Italy and shit. Communists from Italy knew about the California governor race more than I did at the time.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, they were pulling out candidates. I'm like, I've never heard of that fucking guy.
Like Barack D. Obama Shah.
For example, yes. So in Kosovo, the KLA, meanwhile, amplified the terrorist attacks it was committing against the local population. So the local population getting bombed, and then the KLA is like, haha, fuck you, we're doing terrorism too.
Mm-hmm.
So really fucked day to be in Yugoslavia. So they became basically the core of what was kind of like a civilian police force called the Kosovo Protection Corps. But really what it was is a place where former KLA members were able to torture and kill local citizens with impunity.
Mm-hmm.
So one reporter, John Pilger, said it was, quote, the installation of a paramilitary regime with links to organized crime. Indeed, Kosovo may become the world's first mafia state, with war criminals forming an interim administration that will implement the free market reforms required by the U.S. and Europe.
I'm sorry, how is this different than the police?
Fair question. Their supervisors are the World Bank and the European Development Bank, whose aim is to ensure that Western mining, petroleum, and construction companies share the booty of Kosovo's extensive natural resources.
Bring booty back.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
I
also just think this is a banger quote to explain what's going on. He nailed it. So, from March through May of 1999, David Sheffer, who's a State Department ambassador for war crime issues, announces 100,000 ethnic Albanian men are missing in Kosovo. 1 month later, the State Department says 500,000 Albanian men are missing in Kosovo. The following month, U.S. Secretary of Defense William Cohen says no, it's actually 100,000 military-aged men that have vanished and may have been killed by the Serbs in Kosovo. Shortly after that, Ambassador Sheffer changes his number to 225,000 ethnic Albanian men between the ages of 14 to 59 that are missing and feared dead in Kosovo. Then the numbers drop down to 10,000 ethnic Albanians missing and feared killed in Kosovo. Nobody ever had an explanation for where these changing numbers were coming from. People were just throwing numbers out. And then we see this with the Iranian protesters. How many people died? 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. The actual numbers.
No, the country is empty to choose.
Everybody was killed. Yeah, exactly. And we see this happen all the time. You're just like, where the fuck are you getting
There
these numbers?
are 2 programmers doing AI Lego videos.
And that's it.
And that's
a new Ayatollah. That's all you got. Yeah.
Who's gay?
Who's gay? Really? I missed that one. So, Bernard Kouchner, the UN's chief administrator in Kosovo and head of Doctors Without Borders, as well as a friend of the leaders of the KLA, wild, claimed 11,000 bodies were found in mass graves. And he cited the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Republic of Yugoslavia. He's like, I knew it. They told it. They reported 11,000 people were killed. But then reporters went to the International Criminal Tribunal, the ICTY, and they were like, oh, so he got the info from you. This is where these numbers are coming from. Can we see it? And they were like, we didn't fucking say that. We don't know where this guy got this from. We didn't say this shit. So the Council for the Defense of Human Rights and Freedoms, which was staffed in part by KLA officials in Kosovo, also made the claim of 10,000 people. And then the U.S. State Department parroted it. And then the Western media parroted the U.S. State Department. But nobody ever revealed the details of where this number came from. For 3 months, the New York Times alone ran 80 articles, nearly one per day, referencing mass graves in Kosovo. But nobody knows where this was invented. It was like a game of telephone. So, and we're going to see about this. This is going to be major.
They were bombing the graveyards.
Well, NATO was bombing the graveyards for sure. But remember, this isn't the claim. The claim is that Yugoslavia is unaliving and disappearing Albanian men in Kosovo.
I'm sorry, did you just say unaliving?
Yes.
Madeline, you have to stop this. We are... Madeline, you have to stop. I am taking away your internet.
Disappearing.
Can we not just say kill?
Killing. Well, they don't know. You're like, maybe they're gone. Maybe they're unaliving.
This
unaliving.
Is shameful.
Well, get with the times. All right, censorship. It's here. It's here. You got to work around it. You adapt a new language to survive.
Every time I see someone who I'm like, this is a respectable adult person. Describe someone as being graped.
Well, you have, because
I understand. I understand.
So it's a new language. Language is always evolving.
But it is one of those things where I'm just like, I know it's not your fault.
We also have to say is not real instead of Israel.
I know it's not your fault.
G-slide.
I know it's not your I am losing respect for you.
Okay.
Well, you understand, because it's like, right, like, if you cannot speak in
code.
If you cannot speak in straightforward adult
they won't
language,
let us.
But it's like
they won't let us. Okay, anyway. So, we're hearing about all these mass graves, and the world starts to wonder where these murdered hundreds of thousands of people are. Where are these mass graves located? And they also begin to count the bodies of civilians that they actually saw getting murdered by NATO. And NATO is seeing this happen, and then they start upping their game, sensationalizing stories about Serbs having killing fields, playing them up even more intensely, saying, no, you don't understand. Sure, you're seeing us, NATO, kill people. But really, Serbs have killing fields where they're slaughtering hundreds of thousands of Albanian men in Kosovo. They're just saying this.
If you have to choose a way to die, get NATO killed. Don't get
killing field killed.
Yeah,
killing field's not great. Yeah, I don't want a killing field death. So the Democratic Party, Bernie Sanders, Human Rights Watch, Doctors Without Borders, all these NGOs keep on supporting this war. They're like, great war, love it. 10 out of 10 war, keep it going. They went on and on and on about how NATO was actually defending Kosovo from some impending Holocaust. No evidence of this whatsoever. June 10th, the bombing finally ends. The Yugoslav government of Slobodan Milosevic accepts NATO ceasefire terms. And then post-USSR, pro-US Russian leader Boris Yeltsin, it's like, kind of just like abandons Yugoslavia, right?
I mean, he was probably in his cups.
In his cups?
He was famously a tipsy tulip.
Oh, okay. In his cups. I've never heard this phrase before. So they are forced to surrender. They're like, we can't hold up against this. Now, casualties that happened as a result of this, when the dust settles, more than 1 million people had been turned into refugees. Most were ethnic Albanians from Kosovo, the very people NATO claimed to be defending. Many refugees never made it to safety because NATO bombed their convoys. So at least 5,000 people were murdered, mostly civilians, written off as collateral damage. NATO, meanwhile, suffered 0 casualties.
Well, it was an air war,
It
right?
was an air war for them, and very real bombs exploding on people's houses and apartment buildings and workplaces below. Kosovo, Albania, and Bulgaria quickly emerged as world leaders in drug and human trafficking. The slave trade for women and young girls emerged in these areas pretty immediately after Yugoslavia surrendered. It was horrific for people there. And this really seemed to mirror what we saw happen in the dismantling of the USSR.
Yeah.
It was very bad. It was like that. Conditions got very, very bad very quickly in the former Yugoslavia.
I mean, it also reminds me a lot of what happened in like Libya. It's kind of what it is the American playbook.
It is. So what happened? Well, first things first, the NATO bombing of Yugoslavia actually violated international and national laws. Again, you're like, oh, what is the point of having these fucking internationals? They don't do anything. So the UN Charter clearly guarantees the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia had not attacked a UN member. There were no grounds for war against it. Under the UN Charter, collective action can only be taken with the Security Council support, which was not really given. China and Russia had veto powers. They were like, no. So NATO powers just kind of bypassed the UN altogether. Now, NATO's own charter also says it can only take military action in response to aggression committed against one of its members. Yugoslavia had never attacked a NATO member. Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution requires a declaration of war from U.S. Congress. Undersecretary of State Thomas Pickering, testifying on behalf of the Clinton administration before the House Committee on International Relations, admitted that Kosovo was part of a sovereign state and bombing a sovereign state was an act of war. So when asked whether this act of war required the approval of Congress, he said, not every act of war requires it. That's not true according to our Constitution. So the Constitution was just kind of ignored. As Representative Tom Campbell complained, no emergency prevented the president from making his case before Congress. He simply chose not to do so. So Bill Clinton didn't even show up. The War Powers Act also required the president to get permission from Congress if he was going to engage in a limited military action for more than 60 days. The bombings were longer than 60 days, and the White House lifted not a finger to bring the matter before Congress, nor did the liberal hawks in Congress express the slightest concern about the illegalities of Clinton's war. Now, it's worth noting, Donald Trump is doing something similar in Iran right now. He's trying to bypass congressional approval because he only has 60 days of military action in Iran that's not authorized by Congress. Now, the workaround he's getting is claiming they're in a ceasefire. They're not in a ceasefire. Both the United States and Iran are still fucking with each other, firing on each other, but Donald Trump must claim it as a ceasefire. So a fun little hack is that as long as Donald Trump is still claiming we're in a ceasefire, he knows we cannot win the war in 60 days.
Yeah, I mean,
which is a fun little thing. So every time you see him go, we're in a ceasefire, it's like, oh, we're fucked for another 2 months. Okay.
No, he seems... Talking of a husk of a shell, or like the husk of his old self.
Who's in a war will do that to you?
He's making Biden look like a fucking sprightly 62.
Yeah, I think it takes a lot out of you losing a war.
I don't think he's going to happen.
He's also 600 years old.
Yeah,
he's a very old man
who has eaten a McDonald's and Diet Cokes his entire life.
Exactly. He's not doing great. So. Additionally worth noting, the bombings were obviously very clearly centered on highly populated civilian targets. These were not key military targets. They were cluster bombs. NATO planners knew in advance cluster bombs would kill civilians, and very often that they would kill more civilians than military personnel. One bombing of an office building was planned to kill 50 to 100 government and party employees and 250 civilians. They planned for it. They're like, yeah, we'll kill 250 innocent people, but we might take out 50 bad guys. And that was the math they were doing.
I'm sorry, those are human shields.
Yes. Yeah, that's what they're basically saying. How dare they work in an office building? So NATO also bombed. Oh, and it's worth noting, the bad guys are literally just employees of the party.
Yeah.
Like, what? So NATO also bombed a refugee convoy, killing dozens of civilians. And then they were just like, whoopsie. Our bad. That was a mistake. We didn't mean to do that. They bombed civilian targets and afterwards tried to claim they actually were military targets, including in hospitals. They bombed, like we said, schools. They bombed trains filled with passengers. They bombed 2 buses, churches, civilian homes. Casualties among rescue workers were high because they were doing double tap bombing.
Which is also a war crime.
So they would bomb a location, wait for first responders to arrive, and then bomb the first responders.
That is a violation of international, because this is what we did. Remember what we did with the fucking Venezuela shit? And everyone was like, hey, man.
Yeah.
You did a
It's crazy. The idea that there's an ethical way to do war is insane because nobody's fucking doing that. It's horrible. It's awful. So NATO claimed no war crimes occurred, but did say over 500 civilians died. Yugoslavia said 500 military units were killed, but 2,000 civilians died and 6,000 civilians were wounded. Other experts think it was probably around 5,000 people who died. NATO Commander General Wesley Clark proudly said their goal was, quote, to demolish, destroy, devastate, degrade, and ultimately eliminate the essential infrastructure of Yugoslavia. So, when NATO military members refused to bomb civilian targets, they would be transferred out of their position and just replaced with people who would. So some people were like, no, I'm not bombing this school. No, I'm not bombing this bus. No, I'm not bombing this apartment building. And they'd just be like, fine, get the fuck out of here. Then we'll find someone who will. Absolutely psychotic behavior. The attacks, NATO military members said, were all planned by the United States high-ranking military authorities and planned in detail by them. So this was actually the United States pulling the strings. Big surprise. One NATO military personnel guy said they are destroying the country, bombing it with novel weapons, toxic nerve gases, surface mines dropped with parachutes, bombs containing uranium, black napalm, sterilization chemicals, spraying to poison the crops, and weapons of which we still do not know anything. The North Americans are committing one of the biggest barbarities that can be committed against humanity. So NATO members were so fucked up over this, NATO military men, that they were like, I can't do this. This is too fucking twisted. So in April 1999, NATO is bombing Yugoslavia. Teams of international law professors from Canada, the UK, Greece, and the American Association of Jurists filed war crime charges against NATO with the ICTY, basically the International Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia. And that would become former Yugoslavia because Yugoslavia ceased to exist. When reporters asked NATO about this, hey, you guys are committing war crimes, you might even be committing genocide, Jamie Shea from NATO said that the ICJ and the International Criminal Tribunal had no jurisdiction over NATO, saying NATO countries financed those tribunals, so the Genocide Convention did not apply to NATO countries.
That rocks. That is, I love how that's bald.
Oh, isn't that? It's just like, well, we pay them, so who's going to say we committed genocide?
Yeah.
We pay them to say we didn't commit genocide. But that's also why it's even crazier looking at the fact that the ICJ was like, Yugoslavia did not ever commit genocide because they are paid by the West. And even they were like, we cannot prove this, which is pretty wild. So it feels like this was something very internally divisive for people affiliated with the Western military.
I mean, I do think, the thing is if you are liberal, you probably want to do good and don't like seeing people die.
I mean, yeah, and it seems like this was pretty there's no way you could convince yourself this wasn't evil and fucked up.
Yeah. And it's like, if you, a lot of people get into shit because they, have ideals.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe it.
Yeah, good. but well-intentioned, yeah. So, Bill Clinton was like, everybody loved this war. The international community approved of it. But the UN was never consulted. Most UN countries actually actively opposed it. Clinton also claimed the bombings would allow Albanian people in Kosovo to return to their homes, but most of the Kosovo Albanians, as we mentioned, had to leave their homes because of the bombings, and many of them were displaced. So the Western media basically tried to say that Yugoslavia had been this place ravaged by Serbians who were hell-bent on doing ethnic cleansing against Albanians, against Bosnian Muslims, against everybody. But other reporting that came out, especially after the bombings, complicated the narrative. Firstly, the Yugoslav army, along with police and paramilitaries from the Republic of Serbia, evacuated Albanians from the areas that had been KLA strongholds to protect them from battle. And this emerged after the war. So it turns out they weren't ethnically cleansing people because they were evacuating the very people the West accused them of trying to ethnically cleanse to get them to safety when they were fighting the KLA. Next, tens of thousands of Albanians had fled Kosovo during the NATO bombings. One Albanian woman crossed into Macedonia, and local news asked if she had been fleeing from the Serbs. And she was like, what are you talking about? There were no Serbs. We were afraid of the bombs. We're frightened from the bombs. What are you talking about? Then there was around 100,000 Serbian residents of Kosovo who also fled the region, as did other non-Albanian ethnic groups, right? So Serbs had to flee as well. And there's the fact that while NATO said Milosevic had been planning to ethnically cleanse Kosovo of Albanians, German Brigadier General Heinz Lockwey stated in an interview that there was no evidence a plan like this existed. There was just the Bulgarian intelligence departments giving like vague ideas. So this is the whole crux of the claims that Milosevic was like some weird psychopathic genocider. So the aftermath of Yugoslavia surrendering is brutal. Kosovo gets divided. The small province of Kosovo, which had 2 million people, so smaller than the city of Los Angeles, was divided into 5 zones occupied by the United States, Germany, Brittany, France, and Italy. Inside the U.S. zone, Halliburton built Camp Bondsteel military base, which would be the largest military base in Europe.
Sick.
Yes. The fascistic KLA, the Kosovo Liberation Army, which had served as NATO's ground troops during the bombing and tortured civilians, etc., they became the new government of occupied Kosovo.
Also, they are going to get along famously with Halliburton.
Yeah. Well, the KLA gets trained and armed by NATO. So on NPR's Talk of the Nation on June 10th, 1999, Brian Atwood, who's an administrator for USAID as you like to say it, basically said that the economies of the breakaway republics of Yugoslavia had to be totally changed. How do you privatize much of the society? You have to use a lot of people on the ground, helping to provide the technical assistance so that societies can transform their economic systems. So he's basically like, we're going to turn these fuckers capitalist, and we got to get a lot of people on the ground to do it. The other guest, who was Lodwijk Breed, who was a member of the European Commission delegation, agreed, we need to work more closely with the private sector. He noted that U.S. Ambassador Robert Shifter, who was leading an effort in the State Department in full coordination with USAID, is very much interested in getting the U.S. private sector, including, of course, the corporate sector, involved, and we are very much on board in Europe as well. So if you had any ideas that maybe USAID was just going off and helping people, no, they're creating capitalism.
They gave them wells.
Wells? Oh, that's a new one.
I think that the USAID makes wells.
Do they?
This is because, like, the thing is,
I know they made the fake Twitter in Cuba.
Yeah, I mean, like, right, like, the thing is like, the whole, like, the part of USAID that does, like, we built a school,
right?
We're doing women's reproductive health,
sterilizing indigenous women in Peru.
They are doing that.
Yes.
But like, right, like, there is truth to because it's like
they have to do the front.
They have to do the front.
Yes.
They are like when you run a small business that is actually a drug trafficking thing,
right? And you still have to do the small business a little,
but it accidentally becomes kind of successful.
Yes. No, that's totally true. But yeah, just for anybody who has any illusions, USAID fully admits that their main goal is creating the conditions for capitalism to flourish, even in countries that don't want them there. So, as for the mass graves, remember all the atrocities, the hundreds of thousands of people that were the killing fields?
I thought it was 10,000, or was it 200, or was it 100?
And we're going to find out. So in mid-June, the FBI actually sent a team to investigate 2 of the sites that were listed in the war crimes indictment against Milosevic. Milosevic gets pinned down for war crimes. NATO doesn't. He gets charged with genocide. NATO doesn't, right? And they brought 107,000 pounds of equipment to Kosovo to look for the killing field sites that Milosevic had supposedly ordered. They were expecting to find sites accounting for 10,000 to 500,000 potential victims because nobody could give them a clear number. This was being called, quote, the largest crime scene in FBI's forensic history.
I didn't know the FBI did international.
I didn't either. Usually they do domestic stuff, but who knows? They were called in, whatever. So they go expecting to find tens of thousands of people. What do they find? They go to 30 different locations and they find a total of 200 people dead, which is bad. Yeah. But the NATO bombings were found to have killed at least 300 Albanian civilians in Kosovo alone.
Okay.
So a Spanish team also gets sent. They're told to prepare for 2,000 bodies in a mass grave at one site they go to. They find 187 victims of violence across all of Kosovo. And this is similar to the 200 people that the FBI finds dead, right? And they are buried in individual graves, and they have no sign of massacre or torture. One of the Spanish forensic experts, Emilio Perez Pujola, said the stories of mass killings were, quote, the machinery of war propaganda. So the 200 people that the FBI found, probably also just regular people who had died over the course of the battles. A private research team, Stratford, did an analysis based on forensic reporting of exhumed bodies and determined that the final total of those killed in the conflict in Kosovo before the NATO bombings was a few hundred at the most, but they could not be certain because they could not prove that the bodies they were looking at were killed due to atrocities committed in conflict caused by this particular issue. They could have just been people who just died of natural causes during this time. And again, a few hundred people dying is bad, but more people were killed by NATO bombs than that in Kosovo. Experts in surveillance photography and wartime propaganda charged NATO with running a propaganda campaign because they could not find any supporting evidence of these claims that supposedly justified the bombings in the first place. State Department reports of mass graves of 100,000 to 500,000 missing Albanian men are, quote, just ludicrous, according to independent critics. State Department spokesperson James Rubin admitted that the atrocity accounts he provided to reporters were fed to him by the KLA commander Hashim Thatsi and were not necessarily facts. When pushed, the American media tried to salvage the mass grave narrative by claiming that actually all these people had died, but their bodies had been stuffed in wells. Interesting, you brought up wells from USA. Okay.
For some reason, the FBI can't find the wells?
Well, they found the wells. So then they dug up the wells, but all they really found were animal bodies that had died not even linked to the conflicts.
Oh.
So they dug up all the wells they could find.
I also
really looking for these bodies.
Don't really want to drink the water in former Yugoslavia now that I know there are just dead animals.
Just dead animals floating around there, yeah. One supposed mass murder site attributed to Milosevic's genocidal intentions, right, was supposed to be a mine full of corpses.
Uh-huh.
So there's a cat outside the window. Do you see it? It's black and white.
Oh, what?
It's defying logic. It's a very interesting creature.
Okay, this is...
Sorry, listeners, you can't see it, but it's a striking image right now.
It's a very beautiful cat.
It's a very beautiful cat. Anyway, there's supposed to be this mine full of corpses. The entire mine gets scoured. Not a single body is found. No evidence a body was ever there. It's just a wild goose chase.
This is just more evidence of Milosevic's perfidy. He has not only done mass killings, he has disappeared the goddamn bodies.
He's done alchemy.
He's
made the bodies disappear.
He's dead now, yes?
Yes, he died. He died in custody.
We should ask if he can turn lead into gold.
Yeah. So, in total, the most bodies found by researchers following the war were 2,108 people total. But this number included KLA fighters, people killed in the NATO bombings, civilians murdered by the KLA, and even, yes, the people who died, regular ordinary deaths throughout the timeline of the battles that happened to be in battle locations, out of a population of 2.4 million people.
I mean, that sucks.
Yeah, it's bad, but a lot of them, again, are KLA fighters.
Yeah, no, I'm not.
Bombings, all sorts of stuff. So, meanwhile, it's worth repeating. While the Serbians were not innocent, and some did join rogue paramilitary groups, some did kill civilians in Kosovo, albeit not in the numbers being reported, there is also ample evidence that the Serbians themselves experienced ethnic cleansing throughout this. More than 1 million Serbs were driven from their ancestral homelands in the breakaway republics. 3 of the refugee sites were then bombed by NATO attacks. Serbian socialist parties administered the refugee program, and then NATO claimed that made the sites military targets. Very, very sad. So when NATO's KFOR was in Kosovo, 200,000 Serbs were driven from the province. Hundreds were killed by KLA gunmen simply for being Serbian. According to a UN High Commissioner for Refugees, quote, a wave of arson and looting of Serb and Roma homes throughout Kosovo has ensued. Serbs and Roma remaining in Kosovo have been subject to repeated incidents of harassment and intimidation, including severe beatings. Most seriously, there's been a spate of murders and abductions of Serbs since mid-June, including the late July massacre of Serb farmers. Serbs had their houses bombed and set fire. They were beaten. They were murdered. The New York Times wrote that, quote, patrols of NATO-led peacekeeping forces are generally static. The burning of Serbs' homes takes place almost daily in an organized fashion. 2 million books written in the Serbian language, as well as important like archival documents, were totally destroyed. Even the UN eventually had to admit that the Kosovo Albanian leadership was behind the harassment and was encouraging the formation of an intolerant mono-ethnic state. So even the UN was like, oh shit, the Kosovo Albanians are building an ethno-state now.
We didn't want that at all.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. So it wasn't just the Serbs, like I said. Obviously, they were talking about in that how this also affected the Roma people. It also affected Jews. Jews in the area received the same treatment. Jews in Kosovo were shocked. They were like, we had never experienced anti-Semitism from Serbs or Albanians ever until we encountered the KLA. They're like, literally, this is the first time we experienced anti-Semitism in this region. The Romani were driven out of homes they lived in for generations. And then to gain entry to refugee camps, they were forced to pay money and denounce their identity and say that they were now Albanian.
Jesus.
Yes. Romani figures later testified that NATO's KFOR collaborated with the KLA in ethnically cleansing them from their homes. Out of 30,000 Romani homes in the region, 14,000 were burned to the ground. Even other Albanians were treated horribly by former KLA and KFOR members. Young Albanian girls and boys were kidnapped and trafficked into sexual slavery. And that doesn't even count the Albanians accused of collaborating with the Serbs just by not wanting a separatist movement. They were treated horribly as well. So let's go back to Slovenia now for a second. The population, 80% of whom in 1991 wanted to join the EU, was now only 60% interested after all of this. People started to realize that free market capitalism was not what they expected. Meanwhile, in Croatia, the U.S. State Department was publishing reports about how basically the new government was a regime under a Nazi fan, Trudman, right? And they were like, oh shit, we put Nazis in charge in Croatia. Oh no. Trudman died in office in December of 1999, and when he died, the conditions in Croatia were so horrible. They had 20% unemployment. Even the New York Times had to admit his economic conditions were miserable and that he did more damage to Croatia than good. Parenti writes there were even worse things going on for thousands of Serbs who remained in Croatia, especially the elderly. Many were living under shocking conditions, according to Alice Mahan, a visiting British member of parliament. Serbs encountered discrimination in healthcare, education, employment, she found. While homes occupied by Croats benefited from full reconstruction finance, Serbs were unable to get assistance to rebuild after their houses were destroyed. So, in the year 2000, September 29th, President Slobodan Milosevic is overthrown in a NATO-backed coup. He basically gets kidnapped and taken to The Hague. And a new U.S.-backed government enters Yugoslavia and dismantles socialism for once and for all. In Slovenia, conditions began to deteriorate the more that westernization increased in the region. There was this huge influx of crime going on, in particular with children. In Kosovo, members of the KLA started shooting each other in the streets. It was just descending into chaos.
They turned on each other?
Yeah, they did.
Oh.
Who would have guessed? In 2004, a negotiation process came about involving the United States, the EU, and Russia, and this was supposed to supposedly set in motion the final fate of Kosovo. From 2006 to 2008, Balkanization just kind of completed. 2006, Montenegro seceded. Yugoslavia ceased to exist. On March 11, 2006, Milosevic died of heart failure while in The Hague on trial. And media reports of him, as well as people's opinions, are very, very divided. On March 15, 2006, Politico wrote, without a definite verdict by a court of law, Milosevic and his legacy will remain an issue of dispute. But while the verdict in Croatia or among Kosovo Albanians is bound to be clear, devil incarnate, among Bosnian Serbs and in Serbia proper, the jury will be out for decades to come. Saint or sinner, defender of Serbs or their own worst enemy, nationalist hero or a communist opportunist, martyr or butcher. NBC wrote that diehard loyalists laud him as a fallen hero who battled like a giant and would sleep with the angels. His coffin, when it was on view in Belgrade, attracted a steady stream of mourners coming, crying. Some notes were left that read, "For 5 years you fought a giant's fight against false accusations. You died at the moment when it became clear that those accusations were collapsing. Slobodan, I am proud you are my president. You are a heroic defender of Serbia and a fighter for the truth. Rest in peace. You have set an example of how a Serb fights for Serbia and brother Serbs. History will remember that. May your long-suffering soul rest with the angels." Opponents, though, especially in Western-backed media, say he ignited and stoked a virulent racist form of Serbian nationalism in the 1990s that turned the might of the Yugoslav army loose on Catholic Croats, Muslim Bosnians, and Kosovo Albanians as they fought for freedom from Serb dominance. Efforts by his Socialist Party and the ultra-nationalist radicals to secure a state funeral for Milosevic ultimately failed. So we have also this interesting article here written by James Besant, who was a Canadian diplomat from around this time, which I think is pretty good. And what you see during this time is that a lot of random figures, especially from like, I don't know, world powers you would not expect, came forward at this time and were so horrified by Milosevic being made the fall guy for this, that many of them quit their jobs. And when we were talking about doing this bonus episode, like I said, which we probably will do about, what's his name? Ramsey Clark, right, who was a U.S. Attorney General, who ended up like totally shifting his politics around to become a staunch anti-imperialist after this ordeal. But we also have Canadian diplomat James Besant writing about this. And it's kind of long, but I'm going to read the whole thing because I think it's pretty good. So this was written on March 15, 2006. He wrote, "In death, as in the last years of his life, the former Serbian president is being blamed for all the death and destruction that accompanied the breakup of the Yugoslav Federation in the early 1990s. He's been described as the butcher of the Balkans. He's accused of masterminding 4 wars, of committing genocide and ethnic cleansing. These charges have been repeated so many times that they've become part of a received wisdom, yet the facts tell a different story. 2 weeks ago, I traveled to The Hague to appear as a witness in defense of Milosevic at his war crimes trial. We met in his cell for 2 days going over my testimony. He regarded the presiding body, the UN's International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, as a political court set up to make him the scapegoat for everything that had gone wrong in Yugoslavia. He was aware that there was, in effect, a Western news blackout of anything revealed during the trial that was favorable to his case, and he was also resigned to the reality that he would be found guilty. I've been asked often why I was willing to appear as a witness for a man branded by the media as another Hitler. The answer is simple. His prosecution was the most important war crimes trial since the Nuremberg trials of leading Nazis following the Second World War. It was important that the presumption of innocence be maintained, and it was equally important that those with relevant information appear at the court so their evidence could be heard. I was in Belgrade as Canada's ambassador during the critical early stages of the Yugoslav breakup drama, and I was not prepared to remain silent about what I observed. Even in the early days, it was apparent that most of the media reporting about the cause and course of the Yugoslav fighting was biased. In effect, the Serbs had been branded as the bad guys, and any news developments were interpreted on that basis. But it was not the Serbians and Milosevic who started the wars in Yugoslavia. The fighting started because Slovenia, then a Yugoslav republic, declared unilateral independence and used force to seize customs posts along the Austrian border. The federal prime minister of Yugoslavia, Ante Markovic, who happened to be a Croatian, ordered the army into Slovenia to restore order. The army was met by armed resistance and retired to barracks in Croatia to avoid further bloodshed. The Croatian security and paramilitary forces then surrounded the federal barracks, and fighting broke out in Croatia. At this time, Milosevic, as president of Serbia, had no control over the federal army. Incidentally, the federal minister of defense at the time was also a Croatian, as was the foreign minister. Later, when the army lost all of its non-Serbian soldiers, it did become a Serb-dominated force. But when the federal government collapsed, it was none other than Milosevic who ordered all Serbian soldiers out of Bosnia. At the time, I was asked to call upon him to congratulate him for this decision. From the outset of the violence sweeping across Yugoslavia, Milosevic was a key player in all of the peace plans that were proposed. Had it not been for him, the 1995 Dayton Peace Agreement could not have taken place. He was heralded then by U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright as a man of peace. Although the War Crimes Tribunal was set up in 1993, it was not until the bombing of Kosovo 5 years later that a hurried indictment was issued against Milosevic on charges of genocide. Yet the forensic teams that search for evidence of this genocide in Kosovo have so far discovered fewer than 3,000 bodies. Bad enough, but not genocide. Milosevic was a Communist Party boss. He was an apparatchik and an opportunist interested in holding on to his power, prestige, and privileges. He was not an ardent Serbian nationalist, and I believe had little interest in a greater Serbia. As the president of Serbia, he was forced to display sympathy for his fellow Serbians in Bosnia and Croatia, but he did not have authority over them. He was prepared to help them battle brutally for land and power, but he was also prepared to sell them out if it was to his own advantage. And there were many Serbians who despise him for that. It is unfortunate that he died before being given the chance to set down his side of the story. Now we only have his opponent's versions of events.
No, I mean, this was, from people I've talked to from the region, the story you get is like, I don't know, probably not Hitler, but all like the last paragraph, like he was an apparat, he wanted power, prestige, he would sell out his people if it suited him, but also would make alliances with nationalists. Sounds about right.
Yeah.
It's like, he's not a saint.
Right. But he's not
Like,
he's not Hitler.
yeah.
Right. So the German Foreign Office privately denied there was any evidence of genocide or ethnic cleansing on behalf of Yugoslavia's government. The Foreign Office wrote, even in Kosovo, an explicit political persecution linked to Albanian ethnicity is not verifiable. The actions of the security forces were not directed against the Kosovo Albanians as an ethnically defined group, but against the military opponent and its actual or alleged supporters, the KLA. There's no sufficient actual proof of a secret program on the Serbian side to liquidate the Albanian people, to drive it out, or otherwise to persecute it in the extreme manner presently described. People left Kosovo, they did acknowledge, but mostly because they were afraid they would die in NATO bombings or get caught in crossfire between the KLA and the Yugoslav military. As we mentioned at the top of the episodes, also, the ICJ found no evidence that Yugoslavia was responsible for any genocide. One Albanian Italian woman spoke of the media during this time, saying they were negligent and irresponsible in their reporting. She said there was bad information about the Yugoslavia war, which you would only know if you spoke Albanian. She recalled watching the news and hearing reporters mistranslate things. The number 4 would conveniently become 40. She saw reporters in Albanian slyly mention, "Don't talk too much," when interviewing people, with that comment left out of the English translations. Interpreters would whisper in Albanian to people how they were supposed to answer questions. Claims of mass rape were everywhere, with the same articles reporting on them also saying there was no actual evidence of it, just standard normalization of sexual assault that accompanies all war on every side. NATO claimed 100,000 babies had been born in refugee camps to Albanian women in just 2 months. But there were only 200,000 Albanian women even in refugee camps, meaning that for this to be true, half of them would have to be pregnant. And so pregnant that they all were giving birth within 60 days of each other. This explanation is basically where they got the idea of mass rapes from. But 9 months prior, Yugoslav security forces hadn't even been active in Albanian areas, so NATO had to stop defending the claim altogether. CBC in Canada interviewed an 18-year-old girl who said that she would avenge her sister's murder, her sister who had been killed by Serbians. They actually went back to do a follow-up interview with her a few months later, and they were surprised to find that the sister who had supposedly been murdered by Serbians was not dead. She was there at home with the family.
This is how Milosevic hit the killing fields.
He revived them. He revived the dead.
He might not be Hitler. Maybe we're doing a Lazarus.
He's got something, yeah. So people gave interviews on television saying they had seen mass casualties, mass atrocities, but when pushed for details, the numbers changed. Well, I saw maybe a thing or two, right? When asked for specifics, they'd be like, well, I didn't see a thing or two. I heard from someone else who knew someone who saw it, though. A bizarre game of telephone became reported like it was the news. In June of 1999, Kathy Sheridan of the Irish Times went to this little town in Kosovo that had still been held by Serb security forces. She saw a body laying in the street and a lot of Serbian policemen around it. On the way driving back, she ran into a BBC reporter, and she was like, "Oh, I saw a dead body in the road," and that there was a bunch of Serbian police officers around it. Within minutes, he went on the air with the report that an Irish reporter had seen a town, quote, littered with corpses.
To be fair,
one is litter.
One
could be litter.
I can't stand by the plural there.
Yeah, corpses, I don't know, but litter. So in 2007, the ICJ ruled that there was no genocide in Yugoslavia, saying after determining that mass killings and other atrocities were perpetrated during the conflict throughout the territory of Bosnia and Herzegovina, the court found that these acts were not accompanied by the specific intent that defines the crime of genocide, namely the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, the protected group. So negotiations at this time also over the final status of Kosovo reached an impasse. The new Kosovo government, which was headed by a former KLA leader, Hashim Thaçi, stated that Kosovo would soon declare its independence. NATO announced a few days earlier its intention to increase 16,000 troops that were there in order to prevent violence regardless of the outcome of the negotiations. The Russian government, who had previously sometimes been an ally of Serbia, took the position of strongly opposing Kosovo independence, saying that they would block such recognition by veto in the UN Security Council. And this would mean that they would also be able to prevent Kosovo from being granted a seat in the UN. And that would be important because there's no possibility that Kosovo was really about to become independent in any real way, right? They were going to become a NATO colony. They weren't going to actually be their own functioning state. So Charles Kupchan from the Council on Foreign Relations, which has a pretty right-wing pro-U.S. media bias usually, stressed on December 5th in a media conference call, when Kosovo declares independence, it should do so if it should do so, it will not become fully sovereign. It will remain under the trusteeship of the international community, even as it builds new political institutions and attempts to extend those institutions throughout the territory of what would then be a sovereign Kosovo. So when he says international community, he literally just means NATO and the United States, obviously. And what was being planned was not real independence. It was Kosovo being severed from Serbia and operating, yes, again, as a NATO colony in the region. Kosovo would remain colonized, an occupied territory from which the United States and major European imperialist powers would be able to collude and basically take over the region, get access to natural resources, to markets, to crucial oil and gas pipelines. And in 2008, in February, Kosovo did indeed declare independence from Serbia, and this officially completed the Balkanization process. Instead of one Yugoslavia, there remains again 6 small states: Slovenia, Croatia, Bosnia, Macedonia, Montenegro, and Serbia. And ethnic tensions in the region did not end. On many occasions since 1999, Albanian nationalist forces launched murderous attacks on Serbs and Roma people, particularly in the north. So 2009 was the 10-year anniversary of the war, and they actually kind of do something to, I guess, call remembrance to it. They have air raid sirens sound, church bells ring all across Serbia, and they hold a moment of silence at public schools. People will go gather at bombing sites. And there was even an international conference commemorating 10 years since NATO aggression in Belgrade, which was sponsored by the Belgrade Forum for the World of Equals and the World Peace Council. And it saw delegates from 45 countries kind of recognizing that something horrific happened here, right? And today, there are U.S. bases in nearly every single country of the Balkans. Yugoslavia, which is the country of the Southern Slavic people, right? It's gone. It's totally gone. It's been dismantled. The imperialists basically got what they wanted. And, previously they had been seeking to not be broken apart by the larger powers. That's why they came together in the first place. They wanted to unite a bunch of small nationalities. That was their inspiration for forming Yugoslavia, to have something stronger to stand up against these large state powers in the world. And it's completely gone now, and they are completely weakened to these larger aggressors. And there's a bunch of Yugo nostalgia coming about, right? People miss Yugoslavia. A 2015 article came out that said Croatia and Bosnia-Herzegovina agree life was better in the SFRY, right? The Socialist Federated Republic of Yugoslavia. Croatian citizens of middle and older generations, the article says, even more so their peers from Bosnia-Herzegovina, tend to romanticize the country in which they grew up. While the former lament the lost values of the socialist system, the latter will say much more openly that they are Yugo-nostalgians, especially when it comes to social security. They do not hate Tito, and a convincing majority could once again embrace political unity. 74% of Croatian citizens with serious experience of life in Yugoslavia said they would live in a society with one political party again. Only 13% of Croatian respondents over the age of 45 remember the former state for being discriminatory based on nationality. On the contrary, the majority of them, like 83%, say they weren't discriminated against in any way in Yugoslavia. In terms of what Croatians in particular said they missed, 88% of them said they missed the job security that came with socialism. 78% said they missed the public health infrastructure. 72% said that they had better friendships. Also, 72% said they had better economic security. 71% said that they missed the solidarity with their neighbors. 67% of Croatians over the age of 45 surveyed believed that older people were respected more, that education was also respected more. They also believed it used to be easier to find a job and it didn't require a connection. 89% of people surveyed think that work used to be a better atmosphere under socialism. 73% of Croatian respondents thought that workers worked more and even much more in capitalism today. 71% said vacations used to be more accessible to them. 55% said they used to have more free time available. 73% said that they would return to community service if they had socialism, and 86% said that they used to have better and much better times. 67% said there used to be less corruption, and 68% of respondents said that things were more available for them in terms of purchasing power before. In the end, as many as 96% of respondents claimed that growing up in Yugoslavia was safer than growing up in today's Bosnia and Herzegovina, and only 8% of Croatians said Tito was a dictator. Only 3% of people in Bosnia and Herzegovina said so. And in Bosnia and Herzegovina, 65% said there was no doubt that Tito was a good person. And if you ask citizens in Bosnia and Herzegovina, over the age of 45, if they lived better under communism, 92% said yes. And as many as 66% of respondents there think that life in Yugoslavia was not only better, but much better. Only 9% of respondents in Bosnia-Herzegovina said that there was ethnic discrimination in Yugoslavia. 87% deny it with utmost certainty. So today there's a pioneer group of Yugoslavian socialist youth, Yugoslav socialist youth. One member was interviewed, 18-year-old at the time, Milos Tomčić, who was interviewed in 2022, and he was asked if he considered himself Serbian. And he said, "I consider myself Yugoslavian without hesitation. My mom is Serbian, my dad is Montenegrin, my grandma is Croatian. My family is from all over Yugoslavia." The Guardian, not a lefty news source by any means, right? Even reported in 2022, a common narrative during these years was that Tito had, for nearly half a century, forced different people to live together against their wishes. But 30 years on, many still hold deep affection for the country that no longer exists, and they regret its dissolution. They reported that in Serbia, 81% of people say their breakup was bad for the country. And in Bosnia, which was always the most multicultural of the republics, 77% shared that sentiment. Even in Slovenia, which was the first ex-Yugoslav country to join the EU and is widely regarded as the most quote-unquote successful, 45% still say the breakup was damaging. Larisa Krtovic, who's a political anthropologist from Sarajevo who studies post-Yugoslav identity in Bosnia, says there's a great deal of appreciation for the socialist period. It's associated with economic growth and vast improvements in the standard of living, and says critiques of any failed promises of the socialist government pale in comparison to the nationalism and violence that have followed it. Most ex-Yugoslav states have seen huge economic decline since the transition to capitalism, and Bosnia and Serbia in particular are plagued with political strife. George Perelok, born in Macedonia, says all of our infrastructure is from that period, and now it's falling apart. That reminds me of the United States. All of our infrastructure seemed to be from when the USSR was doing well because we had to keep up with that.
The one thing, so I was thinking about that when I was going home last week. The other thing to mention about the United States in that period is we spent a crazy amount of fucking money between around 1942 and 1945.
Yes.
And created a sort of artificial labor capital agreement.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I'm just saying, like, the period when everyone spent a whole shit ton of money to do a war created artificially high wages.
Yeah.
That like, our parents, yours and mine, experienced
not mine.
Well, yeah, I guess your parents were younger.
Yeah, my parents were born in the 60s.
My parents were born... I don't know, my parents were born in the late 50s.
Yeah.
But... I don't know. It's like they experienced the era when people spent a shit ton of money to make things good.
Right. And you also don't have to spend money on war. You could spend money on other things, right? So a 2017 Gallup poll found the only regions who said the breakup of Yugoslavia was good, more beneficial than harmful, was Kosovo and our Nazi'd out Croatia.
Like, I really want to go to Croatia.
It's very interesting. Serbia, 81% said it was bad. Bosnia-Herzegovina, 77%. Montenegro, 65%. Macedonia, 61%. And Slovenia, 45%, but that is still more harmful than good. 41% said it was good. And there was 10% who were like, I don't know. So anyway, perhaps more telling is this. The people who are most likely to say the breakup of Yugoslavia was good are people who were in the dominant ethnic groups in the locations they were polled in.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this with USSR polling as well, actually. Ethnic minorities living in a location were more likely to say that the breakup of Yugoslavia was bad. And this is true for the USSR too. People who are ethnic minorities in the USSR tend to say that the breakup of the USSR was bad, more so than people who are ethnic majorities in the area. Croats living in Croatia, for example, say only 21% the breakup of Yugoslavia was bad, but Croats living in Bosnia-Herzegovina over doubled that response. So ethnic minorities basically felt better protected under the socialist system. And similarly, older adults over the age of 55 are more likely than young people to say the breakup was harmful because they were old enough to have lived through both. So that's kind of it. That's the legacy. That brings us to the end of Yugoslavia. Literally.
Okay.
The end of Yugoslavia.
I think if you haven't already thought it, fuck Bill Clinton.
Yeah, Bill Clinton's fucked up. And the thing that I get out of this is even a malformed worker state, if you want to call it that, right? Even an imperfect worker revolution that ends up doing market socialism and going to the West and needed to take out these IMF loans and hobbling along still functions better than what capitalism has to offer.
I mean, I'm going to say, I can't think of a single socialist project that I'm like, this is 100%.
China.
The free economic or the special economic zones sort of freak me out sometimes.
Oh, like that one that's the Walden City?
Yeah.
Yeah, Walden City is weird as hell, you're right.
But obviously the Soviet Union, a long, slow decline.
Right. But the thing is about communism is that nobody expects it to be perfect. People don't expect perfection out of capitalism. I'm not going to expect perfection.
I'm not suggesting, but right, like I do, there is a place to critique a thing.
Totally.
Yeah.
There is. But what gets me is I'm like, damn, Yugoslavia had all the odds stacked against it.
Mm.
It did things weird and wacky. It had no support. And still, a wacky, bad-ish form of socialism, if you want to call it that, whatever, maybe that's too judgmental, still held these people together more and protected people more than capitalism did.
No, I mean, I would like, again, the Tito-Stalin split seems ridiculously silly.
It does. It really does. It's very frustrating. And that's also the moral of the story, to no matter how frustrated you get with other socialists, with other communists, remember that you got to be adults about it. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a Tito-Stalin split.
Next week, we're having Bob Avakian.
Avakian. You didn't even know his name.
We're having Bob Avakian on.
We're going to bring the cult later on. We're going to talk to
who else is wacky? We're going to bring Bernie.
And they got to be socialists. Count.
He's a social democrat.
Yeah, he's a social democrat, I think, baby. Yeah. Anyway, that's it. Are we gonna do one more bonus episode, you think, this week about maybe the Ramsey Clark text? I think it'd be interesting. I posted it on Patreon for anybody to read. There's a link to the book. It's called NATO in the Balkans, Voices of Oppression, and it has works from Ramsey Clark, Sean Gervasi, Sarah Flounders, Nadia Tessick, Thomas Dykman, and others. So
and is it the whole book?
The whole book is available, but we're not going to do the whole book. Chapter 1 is the Ramsey Clark piece that I think we'll talk about.
Okay.
Over on the Patreon this week. If you're not on our Patreon, go check it out. It's patreon.com/pickmeup. I'm scared. It's $3 a month. We got a bunch of old backlogged bonus content. We try to do at least one bonus episode per big.
We try to do two.
We try to do 2 a month. That's our goal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's our goal. So, I would say we at least do usually one bonus content per big info drop.
Yeah, and what do we... You have been promising Korea forever.
I think our next topic might be Korea, because we've never done an episode about it, which is crazy.
Yeah, can we not make it like a 20-part series?
No. So maybe we'll do a buffer in between of something light and silly. The microplastics episode was fun. We'll do something silly like that.
I am tired of talking about war.
Okay, we'll do something about not war in the interim. Not war.
That's fun.
Something fun, like it's depressing, but like in a fun, lighthearted way.
Yeah, that's always
like what it like.
I don't know.
The rainforest. That's the thing, right? The ozone layer.
I still think that fucking Cedric Durand article about like the physical infrastructure of AI and like the bizarre.
We could do AI.
AI would be fun.
AI would be fun.
You have that fucking book that I left here.
Oh yeah. I have a few books on AI.
That is like the weird inside take on Sam Altman.
Yeah. Interesting. I think an AI episode might be in your future, everybody.
I think that sounds fun.
That's it. All right. Well, thanks for sticking with us through 4 episodes of Yugoslavia. We've only done that once before in Ukraine, Russia.
God, yeah, we gotta learn brevity.
Well, I think it's nice to have the deep dive. That's all I'm saying. All right, whatever. We'll be back next week, everybody. Thanks for being here.